what's the hottest issue on the agenda tonight. But anybody that wishes to speak tonight, please sign in here at the speaker stand or lectern. If you wish to speak, we need to have your name and be signed up. It's a little after 6. We'll go on and call this meeting of the Georgetown-Scott County Planning Commission to order. I think we're missing two commissioners. Mark Sulsky and Ms. Mizell are not present, and we'll proceed without them. The first item of business will be the approval of the June minutes. If you'll take a minute and look those over.
June invoices.
Oh, I'm sorry, June invoices. Got ahead of myself.
I'll make a motion to approve the June invoices.
We've got a motion by Mr. Caldwell,
Second.
second by Mr. Mifflin. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion passes. That brings us to the approval of the June 13th minutes, June 13th, 2019 minutes. Look those over and see if there are any corrections. I'll take a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Mifflin to accept the June minutes.
Second.
Second by Mr. Stone. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. All right, we'll accept I've got approval of the June minutes. Now we need an approval of the July agenda. Are there any corrections, Joe?
There's no additions. Then there might be a postponement.
I think the one thing we might need to point out, if anybody has the agenda with them, is I think new business B, the Bailey Road cell tower. My copy doesn't show that as a public hearing, but it will be a public hearing. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
All right. I don't think there are any other corrections on our agenda. Do I have a motion to accept or have approval of the July agenda?
I make a motion to accept the July agenda.
Motion by Mr. Moran,
Second.
second by Mr. Caldwell. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. All right, we've got approval of the July agenda. That brings us to the items for postponement or withdrawal. None that we know of?
There's one item E, hotel development in Kiwanis Path. I know they were considering whether to postpone.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're here. If you want to call out and see if they're.
Is anybody here for PDP 2019-31 hotel development at Ichabana Path? Anybody here to represent that?
They may be held up in traffic since it's the last thing on the agenda.
We'll wait.
So
We'll wait.
If they show up, we can ask them to come forward.
How many people are here for that? Just show of hands. Several of. I mean, if we knew that was going to be postponed, I'd be glad to let you all leave. But I wouldn't want you to leave and them show up here in 15, 20 minutes.
How much time do they have for postponed or?
Well, they're last on the agenda, so when their item comes up, it can be heard or they can ask for postponement at that time. I mean, Planning Commission can decide to hear it anyway, even if they ask to postpone but that's where they are on the agenda, so.
They haven't officially told you to postpone it. All right.
Do you have a phone number, Joe, or you could try to get in touch with them?
I could real quick.
Why don't we do
Yeah,
that?
you might try them. And we'll. I think we have one item, to my understanding. Is that right, Joe, for consent? And that would be Emerson Daycare. That would be PSP 2019-29 and PDP 2019-30. Emerson Daycare, a preliminary subdivision plat to create a .96 acre lot and a preliminary development plan for a 41,832 square foot daycare located at 301 Schoolhouse Road. Is anybody here anybody present to hear this application? Or anybody against it? If not, I would entertain a motion that we accept this by consent.
So move.
So moved by Mr. Wiseman. Got a second? Second. Second by Mr. Vest. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. All right. That's, that one's approved, and take care of the paperwork with Charlie. And before we get any further, I think we should probably stop for a second. Charlie, do we want to go on and swear anybody in?
Yes, sir. Everyone planning to speak tonight, if you could stand and raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm the statements you're to make tonight to be the truth to the best of your information and belief? And we got the last guy standing. Yes. I do. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. You learn anything, Joe? Nope, not yet. All right. That brings us to our first item of business is old business. FSP 2019-17, the Jones property was postponed or continued, I guess. We continued it, right?
It was
Continued.
all right.
Go ahead, Neil. Thank you.
This is a preliminary subdivision plat to divide a one tract into 4 tracts, 4 5-acre tracts, approximately out on Willowbrook Lane. It's zoned A1 agricultural, and all the surrounding properties are also zoned A1. All right. It's a little hard to see this, but this is just a view of the aerial, and the project site is located at the end of Willowbrook Lane and to the west of the existing Willowbrook subdivision, which is just right there. All right. I'm just going to briefly review the history of the project site, just to give all of you a little bit of background on the history of how this project site came to be. So this is the master plan and preliminary subdivision plat that was approved in 2001. You can see the project site there is outlined in red. So in the master plan that was brought forth, they were intending this to be future cluster subdivision that would have been added on after phase 1. And then this is phase 1 of Willowbrook subdivision that was approved in 2001 and recorded in 2001. And that's what essentially is out there today. So you can see this is where the cluster subdivision is. This is where the project site is now. It was allocated for future development. And then this is where the preserved area is. So this entire phase 1 of Willowbrook subdivision was approximately 100 acres. 24 of them approximately were allocated for the cluster subdivision for Willowbrook, and then approximately 75 were for the preserved area for that cluster subdivision. The preserved area currently does not have a dwelling credit. All of them were used up within phase 1 of the Willowbrook cluster subdivision, but the project site was not a part of phase 1 of this development. It's just shown here on this as future development, but it wasn't part of this 100-acre project that was put forth and recorded. All right. And then this is a plat that was recorded in, 2005 that created the project site. So I don't know, I know it's hard to read, but up here, this is where the remainder tract was. And then this is where that 25 acres was split off from the parent tract up here. So again, it was not part of this 100 acres that was part of the Willowbrook cluster subdivision. So here it's showing it as 25 acres. But then in 2008, a minor transfer and consolidation plat was recorded that just transferred 3 acres over to the preserved acreage because they moved some 3 acres down here. So essentially that's where you get the 22-acre tract that we're looking at today for the project site. And then this is the proposal that has been put forth by the applicant. So as you can see, the 4 approximately 5-acre tracts that she's proposing. The tracks are meeting all of our setback requirements and lot width requirements. The Willowbrook Lane here is where she's looking to access it. The pavement ends approximately right there, so to be allowed to build 4 tracks, she would have to meet county road standards, so essentially extending Willowbrook Lane and doing the turnaround as shown here. So she is showing that she's going to be meeting county road standards, has agreed to it, and it's one of the conditions of approval if the commission decides to approve this application. I did want to just go through one more thing I forgot to mention on this plat that was recorded in 2004. It's showing Willowbrook Lane here, and also, I know this is hard to read, but it's saying that this is the existing access for track 2, which is the project site. So it was always intended to be accessed through Willowbrook Lane. It does have frontage along Willowbrook Lane. It's just that she is going to have to extend and build within the existing right-of-way and meet county road standards. So that's pretty much all I have. I am recommending approval of the application with the following 7 conditions of approval. The only 2 conditions that are not standard is that she'll have to meet county road standards and it will need to be bonded prior to final subdivision plat approval, and there was some requirements of GMWSS that she will have to meet. So I'm not sure if you guys have any questions for me or.
Any questions for Michaela from Planning Commission?
No? All right.
Does the applicant wish to speak?
Prefer to wait until you hear from other people interested.
Okay. How many do we have here? I guess, anybody that wants to speak on this issue from the public? If you do speak, try to make sure you're at the lectern. We try to record anything that's been said in the meeting, and if you're not at a microphone,
Okay.
it's not recorded.
I just prepared a brief letter, like my father did in the previous meeting. I'm just going to read it word for word. Due to the untimely death of my father, John Sharp, on June 5th, just 1 week before the hearing on June 13th, his passing has made this case different than most. It is my understanding that my father still believes strongly that his arguments were all fact-based on the May 9th meeting. Because his death was so sudden and unexpected, there were many things to do quickly. I have not been able to thoroughly look through the arguments that my father made. My plea to the commission is to put this matter on a 1-month continuance. I would like the members of the Planning and Zoning Commission to put yourselves in my shoes for a moment. If your father passed away when you were 26 years old, and you spent the first 30 days after his death burying him, speaking with lawyers, and trying to figure out the estate, all while trying to keep the farm afloat, you would see that it doesn't leave much time for anything else. Under all this pressure, it is not too far-fetched to ask for one month continuance on this matter, so that I may have the right to defend my dad's arguments that he felt were 100% right. Wouldn't you want that right to defend your father's argument? Furthermore, during the May meeting, my father said that he would meet with Miss Jones about settling this dispute. Mr. Mifflin was the member who asked John to have this meeting with Miss Jones and asked for the first continuance. I would like the chance to fill my father's role in this matter and try to work things out with Miss Jones and resolve this matter if I can. And I'm sure I'll be back up here if there's more questions. Does anybody have any questions for me?
Does anybody have any questions? Are there others from the? What's that?
Jones willing to
Willing to continue?
Yeah.
I guess that's. Rita, are you willing to continue this another month, or would you rather go on and hear what? I don't know what the feeling is.
Is that the only person that's going to speak against it tonight?
Well,
No, I know.
I mean,
there's
if you,
several.
if you agreed to continue it, that would probably be the end of the discussion at this point, but
Let me check my calendar. I will accommodate and say, yes, I will continue that, and if they would like to meet any time prior to that, I'd be glad to meet.
I would further ask, is there anybody on the commission that prefer not to continue it and hear it tonight? Is everybody in agreement that we continue?
Steve, I make a motion that we honor the Sharp Boys honors and postpone it for a later date.
All right, we have a motion to continue
Second.
to next month.
Second.
Second by Mr. Wiseman. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. All right, we'll continue this to next month and see if we can
Hopefully the Sharp
resolve,
Jones can get that resolved.
just, Joe can schedule anything. I'll wait just a second here for maybe some people wanting to come in. Is there anybody in the hall out there that's trying to find space to come in now? Hey, Joe. Yeah. All right, that brings us to our next item of business, under new business, the FSP 2019-26, Walnut Street Fiveplex. And this is be 5 apartment units on a 20,504 square foot lot located at 533 Walnut Street. Who's covering this one? Oh, Joe?
Excuse me, see, the hotel representative for the hotel project is here. If you wanted to allow him to come up and discuss whether he's going to postpone or not, or request a
Well,
postponement.
I think that would be fair, especially to the people that are here that don't need to wait till the very end.
Okay.
All right. Just,
I apologize for being late. So, for the record, my name is Jihad Hallani, and I'm with Vision Engineering, address 128 East Randall Road, Lexington, Kentucky 40517. Do I need to swear, Charlie?
Well, it depends. If you're going to testify, yes. If you're just going to, are y'all seeking a continuance tonight?
Our goal is to postpone because.
Yeah, I don't think you'll lie about that. Go ahead.
Yeah. But.
You want to ask a few questions, too.
Oh, all right. Why don't we just do that then? Do you swear or affirm the statement you're about to give to be the truth, the best of your information and belief?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
So we just want to be in front of you today. I understand there's a lot of concern about traffic, and we have contacted Transportation Cabinet. There was a permit engineer, Robert Baker, and tried to schedule a meeting with them to address the traffic congestion in that area. And basically, the only thing we have heard from them back is that they understand there is a concern and they understand there's an issue over there. And they don't believe a traffic light is the right solution, that they think is the right solution. And we're trying to work with them to kind of see about a meeting, what kind of study need to be done, and what's the second step is going to be. So I just want to give you an update on that end, is that we're really working with Transportation Cabinet to see if we can work out something with them. And also, my client are willing to pledge some kind of funds that go toward addressing some concern. We understand the situation is, there's an issue right now without us being built over there. And also, we are zoned for a hotel. and the hotel definitely it would generate traffic, but there's some other use for that can generate, for that zone can also generate much more traffic. So my point is that we understand there's a problem. We want to work with the city, the planning commission, with the staff, with the neighborhood to kind of see if we can solve the problem. But we are like small drop in a big bucket of traffic and some issue in that area. So I just want to first of all update the board, and we are working on it. We're trying to find some resolution to satisfy everybody. And second, if there's any issue other than traffic, we'd like to know, because we knew about traffic. Joe was kind enough to kind of share this concern and explain for me in great detail the issue there, and we understand it, and we want to resolve it. We want to do everything we can. I don't know if we can reach a resolution, but we want to do everything we can to address that concern and go to the second step. So my understanding is only traffic, and we're trying to work out something with the transportation cabinet. I don't know if there's anything else.
I think that's probably a fair assessment of the traffic and safety, and just people. There's a question in the audience.
Is that, can you come and get all of the concerns and postpone, and then come back and have a full, that seems kind of unfair to get all the concerns and then come back.
Well, I mean,
asked to postpone, he asked for additional concerns. It seems kind of unfair to get all those concerns before the actual
planning commission here. Well, I understand. We just, if we don't know there's a problem, I don't know how we can resolve it. So if we know the concern, we can work on them, and we'll be glad to schedule a meeting that all of us share. At least we'll be prepared for that meeting instead of coming to be more productive meeting. So if we can know what's the concern, we'll work on them. And
there probably are concerns from the public that are different from staff. I mean, staff's main concern is traffic.
I would say I know there's other concerns that some of the citizens that live out there have raised with me. So what I would recommend, rather than opening up a public hearing to hear concerns, that they either come call our office and voice your concerns, and I can relay them to Jihad, or Jihad could hold a meeting with the neighborhood between now and next month, maybe after they meet with the state, just to get feedback so that they can. That would be my recommendation, rather than allowing everybody to testify.
I think that would be real good. Would you all want to set a? I mean, is there an HOA meeting or something that he could?
No.
Not one coming up.
Not till November. There's an HOA meeting in September, but we can call.
Yeah, it might be a little too long right now, but.
And she can call a special meeting.
Yeah, if you want to call a special meeting.
Yeah, we can call. If you want to call a meeting and meet with us, you can meet with the board, or we can open it up to the community.
yeah, we'd like to do that.
Okay.
If you all would like to, I don't know if you can just discuss among yourselves a date. It might be a good time to set it right now instead of waiting.
Set it at any time and get in touch with Joe, let him know the date. He can get hold of
Right. They have to approve it.
But
right?
yeah. All right.
All right. Now, are there any other anything else you want to address as the applicant? Or? All right, we have a request to continue, and I don't think that's is anybody opposed to continuing?
You need a motion to do that.
Could we suggest that he call our HOA president, his company call, and request that they set up a special meeting of the HOA so we can all get together?
I think he'd be very,
That's what we're doing
very
right
willing
now.
to do that.
I'm sitting right here. Well, I'd like to.
There's more than one HOA.
There's three. Yeah, that's
All right.
3 HOAs now. The board and the HOA for the village. Okay, good. So we would certainly be interested in meeting. If you want, we can work with you.
And you come to the mic, Steve.
All right.
Just not to take your time, Mr. Chairman, we can talk and then
If you'll
resolve.
get some numbers and that, names and numbers, and same way over here. I don't know if there are 3 HOAs. There probably need to be 3 different contacts. But
Okay. Thank you.
thank you.
So
All
Joe,
right.
do we need an official?
Yes.
I move that we postpone,
Continue.
continue PDP 2019-31 to the August meeting.
We have a motion to continue. Have a second? Second by Mr. Moran. All those in favor say aye. All opposed? All right, we'll continue this to next month, and if we could get somebody here from the state, that would be great too. I don't know who has the, somebody can pull some strings. Maybe we can get some answers.
We can ask Kelly Baker. I don't know how much will be successful. We can make the request.
All right. All right.
Thank you.
You're not going to vote
We'll take a couple minute break here until we let some people clear out. Yeah.
See, they already got one. It's been approved right there next to
Maybe close that door over there.
And I said, go out there and build it. Put it aside. That won't be good right there. That won't hurt. Finish that on the side.
All right, that brings us to our next, back to the Walnut Street Fiveplex. This is FSP 2019-26. It's 5 apartment units on a 20,504 square foot lot located at 533 Walnut Street. Take it away, Michaela.
All right, so like you said, this is a preliminary development plan for a multifamily fiveplex at 533 Walnut Street. The project site is zoned R2, which is our medium density residential. All the surrounding properties are also zoned R2. The project site is 0.47 acres. The density that they're proposing is 10.63 dwelling units per acre, which does meet our density requirements for the R2 zoning district. So this is just a view of the project site. It's kind of hard to see here, but this is the 0.47 acre project site. As you can see, everything around it is also zoned R2. And then this is just a Google Maps version, so this is Ganoa Ave, North Hamilton, just to give you an idea. And then this is the site plan that the applicant is proposing. So they're proposing 5 two-bedroom units on the project site. The number of units that they're proposing does meet our density requirements, as I mentioned before. The R2 zoning district does allow for multifamily housing. The max building coverage that this proposal is showing is 27%. This does meet our 40% max for the R2 zoning district. They are showing that they'll meet all setback requirements. The 2 variances that the applicant is requesting one is for the minimum lot width at the building line. Typically for 5 units in an R2 zoning district, we ask for a minimum lot width of 140 feet. The project site has a lot width of 128 feet, so they are asking to reduce that. Staff does support that variance because they are still meeting the side yard setbacks. So it does seem like the lot width is still sufficient for what they are proposing. And they're also asking for a variance to reduce the number of parking spaces from 13 to 12. So our parking requirements for 2-bedroom dwelling units in residentially zoned districts is 2.5 spaces per one 2-bedroom unit. And so that would require 13 spaces. They are showing 12. So this would still allow for 2 spaces per unit plus 2 visitor spaces. So I am in support of that variance. I do feel that the parking that they're showing on the site will still be sufficient to accommodate the number of tenants that could potentially reside there. So with that, I am recommending approval of the application with the following variances and conditions, just like I went over the 2 variances with the minimum lot width requirement and the variance to reduce the parking to 12 spaces. And I don't believe I had any special conditions on it, just the standard ones that you see. Are there any questions for me, or?
Any questions for Michaela?
I noticed on the map on the parking areas.
Yep.
Some of those parking spaces are 16 feet deep and some are 18. So what's the minimum size?
It's 9 by 18.
So they're
I
requesting.
think the two on the end are the 16, right?
Yeah, over on the left side and the
Yeah.
right side are both 16 foot.
I'll let the applicant address that. I'm pretty sure they're showing the overhang here, which is why they did that, but I'll let the applicant address that for you.
Any other
Where it
questions?
overhangs the curb?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a question. Is that all off-street parking?
Yes, that's off street. So this is the parking area that they're showing. Sorry, I'm probably right your way here. So this, I kind of tried to zoom in on it here, but these are the 12 spaces that they're showing. And this would be the two access points that they would have off Walnut Street.
All parking is behind the building?
It's in front. So this would be, so this is Walnut Street here, and then this would be the parking area, and then these are the 5 units that they're showing. And so then this is the boundary of the project site. So yeah, so they're showing two access points there. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, see, it's not bad. They got 2 kids.
Is that 12?
Maybe grandkid. And
Is that county?
No. We don't believe it's a requirement for private, yeah. I guess I should have mentioned that they are showing that they're meeting all our landscaping requirements for the 6-foot privacy fence around the property perimeter, and there is an existing tree line along the back here and along the side. This is the existing storm sewer that's running along this western boundary there, and they are going to need to add one additional tree here for the final if you do choose to approve it. Yep, sure.
I don't know if this is the purview of this committee or not, but I have a big problem with the street in front of my
Needs to come
house
to-
collecting water, just like a little lake.
Mhm.
Is there gonna be any road work done on Walnut Street proper with this coming in, or do we have any idea?
I can let
I
Ben
need to
speak
talk
to
the
that if
committee
you
about
want.
that, I'm
but-
sure.
Yeah.
Not familiar with it.
I just
That's
don't-
I think that's something that we could look into, but I don't think have an answer for it right now, do we?
Need to have the
As far as
developers come up here.
is this are you
Are you
below?
talking about all of Walnut Street or just what they would be required to do
I'm
on
talking about
there?
My driveway, every time it rains, there's a muddy lake on Walnut Street in front of my driveway because
Okay.
it's uneven.
It's uneven.
So I'm just curious if there's gonna be road work done in relation to this or
That.
on the streets. Yeah, go ahead.
There's already drainage issues.
We need to get
So
those
if you
people
add
up there.
all of that on top of it, it would be way worse.
Let's hold these comments for a minute, and we'll get you up. You can speak to speak at the lecture. Does the applicant have any? You have any comments to make?
Well, I can answer questions, and yeah, I have comments.
My name is Mark Harrington. I live at 1650 Cincinnati Road here in Georgetown. We have approximately 20 rental units just in this neighborhood. We do a really good job in this neighborhood. We've taken old houses and fixed them up. You might know the old Ellis Grocery we tore down and put a new house there. We have a fourplex and a duplex on Court Street. In those units, one person resides in each unit. Not a lot of people. There's 10 parking spots there. You go by there any day, there's 3 used. Those are 2 bedrooms, 1 bath.
How big are the units gonna be, 3 to 5? Are they all gonna be 2-bedroom or?
All 2 bedroom, 1 bath. We cater to. Well, most of the people that, most of our clientele seems to be 55 and older.
Young to middle age, right?
Yeah,
thank you.
The older folks don't move and they don't raise a lot of cane, so we have no trouble. We've never been cited for anything. If you drive by any of our properties, they're well kept. And I brought pictures to let you all look at several properties that's in that neighborhood. Like I said, the fourplex and duplex is right on Court Street, just blocks away. I myself have lived at 406 Walnut Street for about 12 years, still own the house, own the one beside it. My mother lives in that house now. Nobody cares about this subdivision or about this neighborhood more than me. Like I said, I know the traffic situation. When we tore the old barn and the house down, not one time did we have to block the road or keep traffic at a standstill. Like I said, most of our properties have one person in them. Any questions I can answer?
Are they gonna be Section 8?
No, we don't do Section 8. I say who rents them, not government.
I do have a question on your parking.
You need to come up to the mic, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, her.
It helps us to get, we don't know what the question
That's
was
fine.
if it's not on.
Your parking, I see, is over on that easement where there are
No,
actually drains.
we're in the easement. Everything is in our easement.
Because I was seeing the lines like this. I
No,
thought
it's
that
the
was
outside line
easement.
is our
where they're-
boundaries. We've got everything in our setbacks.
So those drains will stay in place to be
Yes.
able to collect the water?
Yes.
Okay.
Other questions for the applicant? If you do, if you have a question,
You're going to come up to the mic, I guess.
I would ask that you come up to the microphone.
Hey, I'm Jeannie Bevan. We own 2 properties that are like directly across the street from this particular property, and we're just concerned about the changes in the neighborhood. Ours are single family, and they've been rented to people long term. Most everything has a large yard there. What happens if you have someone come and rent one of these that does have children? Where would they play? I mean, there's a 25-foot strip on each side and one in the back. That's it.
Well, I'm not saying I don't have a grandchild visit every now and then, but,
Well,
I've never, I've got 20 units in this, and I've never ran across this in almost 30 years.
okay.
I've
and
never had a
you're-
problem.
But you do have more green space around most of your things.
No. I have pictures here to prove that.
And I'm wondering if the parking will actually be adequate. If you have 2 bedrooms in each unit and everybody has a car, you
We
should
have,
have people coming to visit.
we have 10 parking spots on the unit on Court Street. 3 of them are used. Right across the, well,
Yeah, true.
yeah, I believe we have more than enough parking.
In addition to the parking, I'm concerned because there are no curbs there. Anytime you build a building that's almost 5,000 square feet, you're gonna have a rooftop. You'll have a parking lot, you're gonna have a sidewalk where there are no other sidewalks there. On the other side, there are no curbs. There are no curbs anywhere. They built up a little blacktop thing that's about this tall, just as a pacifier, I suppose, you could call it that. So what happens when all the water starts to run
Well,
off,
we'll have to
hitting
meet-
off of his concrete and off of his rooftops? We have the other end of that big storm drain on one of the lots that we own, and we already have a problem because there are no curbs, no way to keep the water from just running off into, Bill Thomas lives in the one that has the puddle in front of it all the time, every time it rains. And the driveway of the one next to it gets a puddle in it that stands. It has the storm drain right over from it. The street doesn't really work because, water can't flow uphill.
Well, I catch all the water on the backside.
Yeah.
I have a river. I have a pond. Every time we have a hard rain, my backyard is the pond. And we get
Sir?
hard surface. And behind me, it's gonna be worse.
I've got some other things just to go over too.
Well, let me answer that
Just let her
question
finish.
real quick.
Finish.
Okay.
Yeah.
We will actually, we will be actually running into the storm sewer drain. There's a storm sewer that runs down our property,
Yeah, I have the
in our
other end of it.
property.
Hey, you're saying it comes out on your property, or the storm drain does?
Well,
Or the-
now they're kind of, I guess they're equal as far as, I don't really understand what happens.
Yeah, I'm
But
not
we're,
familiar with-
when they build a building across the street from mine are on, well, they're directly across the street from that.
Yours are, I'm downhill from you.
She's up there. I think some of these questions are probably more for the city engineer than they are for us.
They are, but once it gets approved and there's a problem, it's not just the city engineer that's gonna solve it. All the rest of the people who are involved will have to solve it too.
Let me ask a question. If a single-family house was on there, would that change the water problems? And it
Not-
doesn't sound like it, I mean, because right now, there's nothing on there and you still have water problems.
It wouldn't be near the hard surface with one family house. Or the size of building. If you have a large parking lot, there'd be more hard surface water flow.
And I doubt anybody would build a building that's as big as this building's gonna be. And I'm not totally opposed to the idea that you have some kind of multifamily there. I'm just worried about the density of it too. You know, the streets over there are completely worn out already. There are no edges, they're gone, which is not your problem really, but
And there's no sidewalk, and we
no
will have
sidewalk.
sidewalks.
And they'll have a sidewalk, be the only sidewalk on the street, which is a plus.
Absolutely.
Is there any reason why you decided a fiveplex there versus the duplex and the fourplex at the other places?
Well, I mean, not really. I mean, the lot was sufficient for it. It fit on there nice. It seemed like we could, the parking, it's just what we come up with. I mean, the parking was sufficient for it. And like I said, these are 2-bedroom units with 1 bath, and they're small units.
Well, they're doing 1,000 square feet. That's as big as a Mount Vernon house.
These units are, I think they're right under 1,000 square feet, 900 and some square
Well,
feet.
one of
per
them is
unit.
above, but the rest of them are right at 1,000 square feet.
Hey, I'm
So-
Phil Bozick. I live at the corner of 320 and Canal. So my question is, anyone who's walking or driving by, are you just gonna see a parking lot then? Is that what you're gonna see?
Well, not much of
You'll-
one, right here.
Okay, so everyone else has yards. It's gonna look bad, it's gonna decrease the value of the neighborhood. A lot more foot traffic, I'm already cleaning up a lot of trash on my yard from pedestrians. So with no yard there, and it decreases the value, why should this be a good thing? You're saying, you're saying you're for the neighborhood, but it doesn't sound like it is.
Well, I've cleaned up a lot of houses in this neighborhood, and
Well, and that's good because
Yeah, hold on.
It's gonna be impossible to take minutes
Yeah,
for
yeah,
one.
it is.
So why don't we just have one person
One person at a time speak, yeah.
Let the applicant finish, let one person at a time speak what their issue is, and then let the applicant address it, just for the sake of keeping minutes clear.
It's gonna make it hard.
any more questions for me, and I can come back up and answer.
I would point out, I mean, I know everybody would like for this just to be a single-family house probably, but the zoning was already there for R2.
The zoning was already
He's
there.
not-
Like I
he's
said,
not
it's almost
changing
half
the
an
zoning.
acre in town.
I've got a couple of questions, and maybe you can answer part of it, and the staff can answer part of it. Are you gonna have, for garbage disposal, are you gonna have dumpsters or individual
No,
Kirby's?
it would be city pickup curb.
Where would they go for these units?
They would go around back. Each house will have a storage facility around the back, going around each unit.
Okay, so 1 through 4, are they stoops that we see on the back part of the property?
Yes.
But number 5 doesn't have one?
The number 5 would be completely behind it.
Yeah, but it doesn't have a back door to it?
Yes, the number 5 does have a back door.
Okay. Maybe it just got left out.
I don't have a copy of it with me.
With the 25-foot setback back there, that's not considering what was an alley at one time.
Correct.
But yet you're extending the fence all the way back there. Why not move the property on back some? Can they do that, Joe?
No, we can't move it.
Why not?
We can't move it on back because we're just staying in the offsets now.
I mean, it looks like on Gano, there's
the
a house
parking.
built on that alleyway.
Oh, this is probably what they're trying to avoid, is, I think that's an existing 24-foot, is it sanitary sewer? 24-inch?
Yeah, but I'm saying, why not move this?
They can move it some, but not much. I
Yeah.
don't know what the
gain some
setback's supposed to
space.
be from that sewer line.
That's all I had. Thank you.
I know in the setbacks, we didn't have any room to go back any further.
So that,
We're
that
staying-
alley
we're
back there
staying
is
in
just
setbacks.
wasted space back there, you can't use it? It's just there?
Nobody's using the alley?
I'm Sam Harrington, 1007 Walker Way. Just wanted to help him out. On the rear of the property, there's a Georgetown Water has a sanitary sewer easement in the back and on the left-hand side of the property. So that does, get the width stay so far back off of that.
Right.
Just, due to the fact, to meet the setbacks.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, there's one down the side here, too.
Yeah. And so you were saying you're gonna, all of your downspouts in your guttering will be emptied into the storm sewer system?
Yes, we will. Well,
We'll meet the plan that's required by planning and zoning, before before we get the final, okay to go ahead, we have to submit that, to be in, I believe it is.
Yeah.
And it has to be approved.
There's a condition that they have to be above street.
I believe it's on the paperwork.
Final stormwater management plan.
Because this is a multifamily development, they will have to meet stormwater management requirements, everything that anybody else, any other commercial business does. That means they will have to slow the water down to what would have been there in the past, not to a bare site, but equivalent to 2 houses, driveways, whatever. They'll have to make sure that water doesn't run off any faster. They'll have to provide treatment for the water, and they will have to infiltrate a small portion of the water per our normal requirements. They are proposing to fix up add curb and gutter along the street to continue that. Sidewalk along there, that would all be part of the street. If there are serious issues in the street, they need to contact City Hall, city engineer, and notify what those issues are. I mean, if there's need for repaving or a rehab project or something like that, they can start getting that on the books. So, any other questions while I'm up here?
Is that generally the biggest concern that on the street is all the, I know the street, I guess, is in disrepair, and then it sounds like you have some stormwater issues, standing water? Traffic?
A kid got hit on Walnut Street not that long ago, right in front of our houses.
All right. Well, if we have other people from the public that want to speak on it, if you come up one at a time, we'll try to get you on the record.
My name is Bill Thomas. I'm at 528 Walnut Street. I have a statement more than anything. I don't know if it matters, but that's an old neighborhood, and it's all, I understand the zoning, but it's all single-family houses, and it just kind of seems a shame to me to put this big monster dead in the middle of the street on a street like this. It's just out of character. Is it going to be a brick building? Are they going to be... Okay, so you're going to have an all-brick building on a street that has no brick houses whatsoever. I mean, that's just, yeah, the zoning is right, but does it look right? I mean, you're kind of taking that little quaint street, what it is, and dropping a big brick monster right in the middle of it. So, I mean, that's not a question, that's just my comment as somebody that lives there.
So I do have a question. I have lived at 526 Walnut Street for 40 years, my whole life. And it's always been a quiet little street. We haven't, Stacy Johnson, I'm sorry. And we've always had like peace of mind on our street. And I have children, and I just don't want all of that extra traffic and stuff. But anyway, my question is, so the water that runs off already, sorry, that's already a problem. When it floods my yard, which is right across the street, who do I call? You? Or them? Who's gonna fix it? Me? Nobody. So I'm not okay with that. And I'm not okay with a parking lot being, when I sit out on my front deck, seeing a parking lot. And you cannot guarantee that only one person is going to live in each unit. There could be 2 people with a teenage child and they have 3 cars in all 5 units. You can't guarantee that that's not going to happen. That's all I have.
My name's Rodney Everman. I've lived there for over 50 years. Mike, he's lived there how long, Mike?
Well, my
Grandmother, Stacy, she was born, I remember when she was born. I mean, I know the zoning's all right, but it's bad. I mean, it's her home, and it's a good neighborhood, and to put something like that in the middle of it, it's pitiful. I mean, it is, really. I mean, couldn't you build a couple of houses or a duplex or something? Why a 5-plex? I mean, why? Right in the middle of the street. I mean, there's nothing like that on the street. Go down Walnut. If y'all just drive down Walnut, look at it. Just go down Walnut. When you get to go down Walnut, when you get to Payne, make your right. Go up Maple Street. Look to your right, and there's what you turn it into. It's pitiful. I mean, you know, and I mean, it's just that's my home. I love it. I'll probably die there, and you know, but that's just it's pitiful. And we got several people come out tonight that are against it. And it's just not right to, you know, take a neighborhood like that. I know it's zoned and everything says yes, but you got to look at it from another point of the people. You know, we live there, man. That's our homes.
Rodney, what was your address?
My address?
Yes.
522 Walnut, sir.
Thank you.
522.
My name is Charles Ritchie, and I live at 530 and a half Walnut Street, which I share a lot with Jeannie. Okay, back in the day in 1967, my grandmother bought the house, and Bill Henry, if anybody knows the name Bill Henry, plopped 2 houses down on. So it's really confusing for UPS and stuff, put the half on there, but that's what he did. So I live right across the street, okay? I'm with everybody else on this. Everybody has a little bitty front yard. I have a little bitty front yard, and most people have a big backyard. So everything is pushed up on the street. Now, she's exactly right. Can he guarantee there's going to be one person with 1 car in there? No. Your average family's got 2. Maybe they got a boat, maybe a motorcycle, you know, and there's no parking on the street. There's no parking on the street. In fact, I have a truck that I had to get on my property line and pour concrete to get it off the street, because the city says you can't park on the street. There's no parking on the street. There's no curbs. The water runoff is bad. You know, I mean, really, if we're going to do something like this, come in and rebuild the whole daggone street. Okay, is anybody going to do that? Probably not. And I agree with Rodney. I know the house. I know what it's zoned like. I mean, I grew up on Chestnut Street my whole life. You know. All that whole thing there when I was a kid was a farm, you know, and then it started being dwellings. So all of a sudden, he's exactly right. You're going to go down, make a turn, and go down on Maple Street. Now, that's Section 8 housing, okay? And I'm not saying they're going to do that. But, you know, I've lived in apartments and stuff. I've been there 40 years, so through my grandmother and whatever. The place is just not set up for that. I'm telling you, it's going to be a disaster with that parking lot. It's going to be a disaster. There's no parking on the street. There's just not. So, I mean, that's all I got to say, you know. So, thanks.
Sir, it's not legal to park on the street, or it's physically impossible?
It's physically impossible.
But it's legal still.
No, if you're, I mean, they've got a little tiny, they've made their own little parking lot, whatever, you know what I'm saying? Jeannie doesn't have any parking on the street. She's got a driveway. Everybody has a driveway, and they've made their own little parking lot with gravel. You know what I'm saying? Just, in other words, they've parked on the grass, and it's turned into a parking lot for the houses.
Are there signs that say no parking?
No.
Oh, okay.
But I'm just saying, you can't park on that street. There's no room.
Okay.
You weren't in the yard, you would be in the car. Quick question.
Bill Thomas again. Did you guys give any consideration when you designed this to what it was gonna look like? Then why did you go with all brick buildings on a street that has not a brick on it, no one house?
Me and Gene have brick houses.
Well,
There's a couple, but for the most
they're
part,
not fiveplexes. Mine's
Hold on. There's only one person at a time,
I'm
please.
sorry. I'm sorry, I stand corrected. There are a couple that have bricks on them, but 98% of them do not. And is this gonna be 2 stories? Single story? Well, that's,
You go up Gano, there's brick houses.
okay, we're not talking about Gano, sir. With all due respect, we're talking about Walnut Street. Gano is a totally different animal than Walnut Street. It's twice as big, it's 3 times as long, it's not Walnut Street. So you can make arguments, but that's not an argument you can make. Gano is not Walnut Street. So I was just curious if any thought went into what it looked like when you actually, if you do get to build it, what it's gonna look like sitting on that lot. So you said you did, so thank you.
Well, we've dealt with some issues like this before where drainage and standing water, and sometimes the project can actually help that, but I'm not sure that this is the case here.
That's why I asked if there's gonna be any street work done, but there's too many other factors. Overall, it sounds like to me for this to be a good idea for that street or for this town.
We're not city council or city engineer, but I think is probably who you need to be talking to about the street issues. As far as what we can control, we're just looking at the zoning and
You can understand there's many more issues apparently than just the water industry.
That is something we should weigh those 2 items.
what we have to do is obey the law, and the law is.
They're not sufficient.
But, all right, are there others to speak? Right.
I'm Kelly Young. I'm at 529 Walnut Street, which is directly beside it. And I just wanted my concerns on the record, which is the parking. That I think you're looking at least 10 people realistically and 10 cars. And that's just a lot of traffic for our street is already very busy. And most of them are single family dwellings currently that have kids, and they're not going to have anywhere to play. And we already have kids that are playing in the street constantly, and you're looking at more cars on that street, so I just think it's a safety issue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any others to speak? There you go.
I'm Tricia Bozek. I live on 321 Gano, so we're right at the corner. We did not live here for the last 40 years, but we moved in 2015. If there had been a 5-plex back there, we would not have bought our house. It is one of the only streets in that area that does not have apartment buildings or things like that going on. We do get a lot of the foot traffic. Sorry, I'm nervous. I hate talking. We do get a lot of the foot traffic from places like Maple, where there is some apartment housing going on, lots of trash and things like that. We don't need that added on. It's a beautiful neighborhood. Maybe if it were something like the lot's big enough to maybe do 2 single-family homes and rent those out, but a 5-plex is a lot for that street. So I just wanted to say that part. I think it will look awful. I do think that it will devalue that entire street. So that's my spiel on it.
Tom Turner, 532 Walnut Street. I'm with a lot of these people in that I think it'll hurt the property values. And honestly, we've all been there 30, 40 years, and we like the neighborhood the way it is. Zoning or not, that's our concern. It's a nice, peaceful street, and we like it that way, and there's already too much traffic going up and down through it now. So I've lived there since '92 myself, and I like it the way it is. We all do. Zoning or not, that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Are there others?
I'm Judy Bevan, and I don't live there, but I own the 2 houses that are there that I do have nice renters in. My concern is the water issue The density of it is my biggest concern. 5 units that are almost 1,000 square feet is as big as 5 houses from Mount Vernon, and that would be a lot to expect on that lot. I want the same careful consideration that you would give for any old established neighborhood in Georgetown. So.
Anyone else to speak on this application?
Hello, Charlie Johnson, 526 Walnut Street. Stacy is my wife. The same thing that everybody's kind of mentioned on here, the big concern is going to be the additional traffic. My wife brought up a point a minute ago. We had a little boy, about 18, got hit coming down right alley onto Walnut just recently because of some of the traffic coming through there too quick. That's already an issue now. What's going to happen a year or two from now when we have a 5-plex here with all this additional 10 people, holidays? Right now, when we have holiday get-togethers, luckily for us, we're very close friends and family with everybody in our neighborhood. So when we have additional family come over, we kind of borrow each other's driveways. You know, Dolores, right across the street from us, she's like, if you need to, park here. That's fine. We're all family. Our whole little neighborhood's a family. We've all been there for a long time. We're bringing in a 5-plex now that's going to have, what'd you say, 2 to 10 people? That could double very quickly. Yeah, that's just a guarantee, what he said on paper. That could double or triple at any holiday. Then you've got additional traffic, different concerns with people coming in and out. That's the big concern we're all having right here. We love our neighborhood the way it is. We really don't need a 5-plex. Does it have to be a 5-plex? A 2-plex, a duplex.
2 duplexes.
A duplex would make sense for the lot that's there. I know, it all comes down to dollars.
It's one less building if they did 2 duplexes.
Ma'am?
Half the people in our little neighborhood, we all work at the same place. We all work at Toyota. We all work different shifts. We watch out for each other. I'm leaving, he's coming in sometimes. It's a family little neighborhood, and we like our family the way it is. So our concern is what's going to happen. Thank you.
Others from the public to speak, or does the applicant wish to respond to any of the concerns? Or
Well, I would like to. And at the other end of Walnut, there is a duplex right across from 406 Walnut. It's a really small lot. We've never had any problems with it, you know, right across the street from my house, compared to the size lot that the 5-plex would be on. Like I said, the duplex is on a really small lot. Do y'all have any more questions for me?
Would you reconsider and put a duplex instead of a 5-plex?
Probably not, no.
What was the last question? We missed it.
he was asking, would he be willing to reconsider to instead of putting a 5-plex on it, to put a duplex, or to scale it down?
And he said probably not. What would you have in mind for the lot if it was turned down, that you couldn't?
I'm not sure at this point.
You don't have any idea maybe what could go there? Or, I mean, you probably had an idea maybe, but I just wondered. That's okay.
Like I said, at this time, I'm not sure.
Joe, I guess all of these, all the surrounding lots are also zoned R2, or is that correct? So if any of those ever decided to change, then they would also have the opportunity to put a larger?
The R2 allows single-family up to and multifamily developments based on the lot size. So you only need to get development plan approval if you're doing above a duplex. So he could do a duplex by right without needing any approval of this board. He could just build a duplex. Triplex and above, he'd need to get approval of a development plan, and the number of units you're allowed is based on the density in R2. So 12 units an acre. So depending on how big your lot is, you can do more than, 2 or 3 units. Typically they're not, those lots aren't big enough to do more than, this is a very large lot probably for that area, but.
Yeah, this is
So this is a development plan.
0.47 acres.
Because it's above, it's a triplex and above requires a development plan.
I have one question about the lot.
Come on up to the,
Was it always one lot, or was it 2 lots?
I believe it was 2 lots at
I
one
believe it
point.
was 2 lots too. When did it change from 2 lots to 1 lot? I thought the part the barn was on was 1 lot, and the part the house was on, that the Boykins lived in, was
No,
another
I
lot.
believe the house and barn was always on the same lot.
Yeah, but you think it was 2 lots?
I believe it was
at
2
one
lots at
point.
one point.
20,000 square feet. It's a half acre almost. 43,000. 43,000 if you got 43,000.
My other question about that is, did you combine them, or did someone else combine them before you got there?
We can.
Okay.
come on up.
Well, I don't deal with legal issues and all that, but being an advocate of the neighborhood, as you say you are, and the time that you've been there and everything else, where did your thought process come from that it would be a good idea to drop this in the middle of this neighborhood? I'm just, obviously you're a developer. I guess you look at things and think, I can develop this, but the attachment that you claim to have to our street, and what was your thought process saying this big thing would look good sitting right dead in the middle of the street? There's nothing else here like that, but I think it would look good there. I'm just curious as to what made you think that
I
was
believe
a
the
good
lot's plenty big enough. I believe the unit, like I said, we have a 4-plex, just 2 blocks over. It works out really good. We have low traffic. So I believe.
You took 2 lots and made it into one.
Well,
I mean, you took 2
Hold on,
lots
hold on.
and made it into one. to go
Just
to
one,
the
one at a
5.
time,
And we
please.
could have put a duplex on each lot, and we're talking 4 units versus 5.
But just because you have other
You know,
units
we could not be
doesn't
standing here, we could have taken the 2 lots and put a duplex on each lot.
Yes, and that would be
And we're
better.
talking 4 units. The lot is almost half an acre. It meets the requirements.
We understand that, sir, but
And,
I'm asking you.
and I've listened to everybody fussing at me about their water problems. Has anybody been to the city or?
We're going to, but we're fussing at you.
I mean,
what
for-
your additional water problems you're
We have
developing.
complained about
Well,
the
I would
water
have to be in
situation.
compliance to not
That's what we're
cause
saying, it's
any
already-
additional.
We got to be civil here. You can't all speak at once. It's just one at a time. I think we're going to have to take a vote here in a second and decide how the commissioners feel on this. But I don't know if.
Yes, ma'am.
2 duplexes would have looked better in our neighborhood. They would look all right. If you did 2 duplexes that look like, normal houses on a street with all normal houses, then it would look fine. It would be beautiful. They would have driveways, whatever. But a 5-plex is a huge, massive structure.
Is there anybody in the audience that wouldn't be happy with 2 duplexes?
We would be at the same exact thing if it was 2 duplexes.
There wouldn't be a parking
Yeah,
lot.
There wouldn't be a parking lot and one front door.
Not with 2 duplexes.
Yeah, would you build a parking lot for 10 cars if you had 2 duplexes?
You would build 2 driveways.
You build 2
2
driveways.
driveways. They would have separate driveways.
The parking lot is not what that street is about.
I take pride in my house, and I like
All right.
to sit out and look at my beautiful neighborhood.
I just want to mention real quick that you keep saying that it meets all requirements, but I see on that projection screen, it clearly does not.
Excuse me, can you say your name?
Yeah, Vitold Bozek, V-I-T-O-L-D. I'm at 321 Gano Avenue. So is that not true? It's not meeting the requirements, which is why we're here?
Well, there is a variance there, but it's, the lot is probably more than, it's almost a half acre, and as Joe was saying, a 1 acre lot, R2 allows up to 12 units on 1 acre, so at 0.47 acres, that would indicate close to 6 units, and this is at 5, so it's probably within the. But the big thing is, if the neighborhood's gonna be happy, it sounds like the 2 duplexes would be much more accommodating to the neighborhood, but I don't know. I don't know that the applicant's willing to change these plans at this late of a date.
Mr. Chairman, could I at least clarify a couple of things? The fact that variances are requested doesn't mean it's against the regulations. Variances are part of the regulations. Joining 2 lots together, you can join 2 lots together anywhere in the city and use them for what the zoning permits. So that's not a problem either. The only issue we've got, since it is properly zoned for this, is whether or not the physical layout can handle it. And if it cannot, well, then the board would be within its authority to say, no, not 5. Make it the 2 duplexes and go from there. Approve that tonight, and he just has to go work out the plan. If it will support it and it meets the regs, then we don't really have any choice. We set up regulations, and if people adhere to them, they get approval. We don't say, well, yeah, you meet the regulations, but we're not going to approve yours. We don't like yours. We like that one, but we don't like yours. We can't do that. We had no authority to do that. Nobody would like it if we tried that kind of authority. So either it works from a planning and design standpoint, and if it does, then it should be approved because it's under the density that's allowed under R2. If it doesn't work, but 4 units would work, then say no to the 5, but you will approve a 4. Then that way the gentleman knows what he can count on. He can go make the adjustments. The neighborhood knows what they can expect. But if it can be accommodated, we really don't have any choice. In fact, many places, if this application goes through and it meets the regs, staff signs off on it because it's administrative. We bring the community into it just so they're more involved and more aware of what the system is. But when people comply, I mean, people ought to be rewarded for complying.
So just to understand what you're saying, I believe I do. All of us here sharing our opinions and our thoughts on what we think. As long as he meets the legal requirements, it doesn't really matter what we think.
Well, I won't go that far because if what you all say demonstrates, no, listen to me first. If what you say demonstrates that the site does not work, the fact that it may measure correctly but it doesn't work, that gives them the authority to change things. If all you do is say we don't like it, we don't like Section 8 or some other, absurd thing, then no, that doesn't give us the authority to do anything except approve it because the regs are satisfied. But if you give us things that are physical, on the ground, measurable, that kind of thing, that it doesn't work, no, then they've got authority to do something a little differently.
The love of the neighborhood, everybody here is not a thing you're going to measure on the ground.
I understand that. I understand that. And I understand that, which is exactly the same reason, despite I love my neighborhood for 40 years, when someone decided to put an apartment building across the street, all I could do was smile. Because it's R2. We couldn't do anything about that either. So, I mean, I understand. I absolutely understand. But we have a legal response. And by the way, I do the legal stuff. That's what I unfortunately do. And we have limits on what we can do. And if we do something where we don't have the regs to back it up or the physical something to back it up, then the circuit court down here is going to tell us to stop. And we're going to be out all kinds of trouble, and our system gets basically in a bad reputation as we don't work well with people, and then we don't do a service to the community, which we're supposed to be doing. So if it meets, we go with it. If it doesn't meet and we can document that and demonstrate that, then we can do something else. But if it meets the regs, then it's supposed to get approved.
I think the other issue on this application is gonna be that this is a new unit. It doesn't matter if it's 1 or 5 or 2 or 3. And our requirements are the things that we require throughout the city now are gonna be different from what you have already. I don't think there's a sidewalk on either side of the street, is there?
No.
No sidewalk, no curbs. So you're gonna have curbs, you're gonna have sidewalk. You're gonna have pavement or concrete, one or the other, which probably not much along through there. I don't know that, maybe we need to look at making some of these new applications fit into what's there already. But, maybe we need to waive the requirement on that type of parking and the curbs and make it match what's there already. But
If we're looking at like physical, Tricia Bozak, I'm sorry. Do you need my address?
state your name and name
Tricia
again.
Bozak, 321 Gano Avenue. So if it's physical things, then we don't have any, like what would make the parking lot, like to me, it's a terrible idea to have a parking lot on that space, but I can say that's not good for me, and it's not good for a lot of these other people, but what is the rule on it? Like what, you can just put a parking lot in any space you want, and it's fine?
Well,
That's I mean, it's a physical thing. There's no other parking lots on that street.
it's different for R2 than it is for R1.
Yeah, that's what R2 requires. It requires so many spaces, it requires bushes and trees and whatnot, and they've satisfied the rules.
Okay, I just didn't understand. I mean, I'm trying to understand like the physical things that you're saying that we need to be bringing up. When I see a huge physical problem, but I don't understand your rules versus what I think. Does that make sense?
Oh, yes, ma'am, it does.
Okay.
No, I understand.
So I just wanted to know, because to me that is not good with any part of the neighborhood whatsoever. It doesn't make sense.
I can address that.
Sorry, thanks.
Multifamily buildings require over 2-bedroom units, require 2.5 parking spaces per unit off-street. So because it's an apartment type building, multifamily building, multiple units, it requires more parking off-street, so that's why the parking lot. Single family requires two off-street.
A duplex would require 4. Is that correct? No, it require 5, wouldn't it? 2.5.
No, duplex I think would require 4.
4.
Yeah. So.
Charles Ritchie, 530 and half Walnut Street. So I want y'all to understand that every house on that street is pushed up on the street. Why don't he push his houses up on the street and have the parking lot in the back?
I'm not sure, is that possible? Is there
I'm telling
still
you,
a
there's
right-of-way
no
through there?
place to park on the street. All of us have made our own parking lot.
But that's what he's doing also. Is it possible to park around, they don't have enough room to park in the back, do they?
Is it possible?
To put a driveway around back?
I think it was originally designed with the alley, so rear access. The alley was probably obviously never put in, but
Yeah,
there looks like
There's never been an alley?
No. The
I
whole
mean-
thing was a farm. The whole thing was a farm.
Actually, the whole thing was laid out with alleyways in the back. Some have been used, I'm not sure all of them have ever been used. Some have been taken over and some have been abandoned, so I'm not sure there's any consistency from one end of a block to the
I
other.
think to answer your question, I think it was a design choice, but also to be able to take minute. I mean, if we could just get the comments at the podium addressing the chair,
yes.
so we can keep track of.
I know this is a emotional. There's a lot of emotion that goes into these, but just try to. These comments are not useful to us unless we can record them and put them in the minutes. And now, would anybody?
Sorry, sir.
Would anybody be in favor of this more if there was a single driveway going down? We crowded this thing over to the side, and you put all the parking behind it, and kept the look on the front just like the rest of the street, like there was one driveway going back. Would that change any?
If the parking was in the back and it looked like the rest of the house.
It might make it.
I'm sorry.
if the parking was in the back and it looked like the rest of the houses, then that would probably be closer to being acceptable to a lot of people. My comment for you guys, legal issues, Mr. Perkins here eloquently laid out for us aside, just ask yourselves, I'm asking for responses, ask yourselves, how long that street's been there? I don't know, 50 years, people have been living on it 60 years, and I don't know if it was R1 or R2 all that time.
R2 the entire time.
Okay, and all that time, there's
Well,
nothing-
since 58, excuse me.
Okay, since 58, it's been R2, and in all that time, nobody has ever built anything but a single-family house on that street.
Yeah.
So why is now the time to buck that? And I'm not asking for a response, that's something I wish you guys would think about.
I would just ask a question to the applicant. Would you be willing to continue this to next month and talk with staff about the possibility of moving the parking lot to the back? I don't know what the regulations are with this sanitary sewer. If you can put. It can't go because of the sewer?
I'm Everett Brownell, and I live right behind this. I'm 510 Chestnut Street. If you put a parking lot in the back, it's going to be a lot of hard surface. I'm going to get all the water from that lot.
Well, I think
I'm getting most of it right now. I get more than Walnut Street gets. The grade is all graded towards Chestnut. That field is.
As Ben was saying earlier, though, on any new construction, the engineer has to sign off on it that all the water is going to be
How am I gonna know
equal or
that?
less than what it started.
Am I going to be satisfied with that?
Yeah. I think the biggest issue here is just that we have a 24-inch sanitary sewer line around back, and I don't know if we can push the building out and squeeze that in there or not, but it just won't work. All right.
I have
Other commissioners
one
have
more.
comments?
I have one more thing. So in our neighborhood, we're not even allowed to put
Name?
privacy.
Yep. Please state your name again.
Stacy Johnson again, at 526 Walnut Street. So in neighborhoods like that, you can't even put privacy fences in your front yard. But you can put a parking lot in your front yard? Can we change it to where we can put privacy fences in our front yard so we still feel safe?
You'd have to come to city council, that's a city ordinance.
That's just a problem that I have.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this is important, but you said 58, my house was built in 55.
No, the zoning was in 58.
Zoning
Oh, started-
Well, some of the houses have been there since the 40s and earlier, but,
Only the one across the street from mine.
yeah, but zoning is 58.
All right, do any other commissioners have suggestions or comments?
I got a question for Joe. If the two variances wasn't there, would staff still have this under approval? As far as the lot size and the parking space, will that still make it be approval?
Yeah, if it met all our requirements.
But I'm saying where the lot doesn't and they want a variance.
They are asking for a variance, you saying, and we are recommending approval.
Right.
Yeah, because,
Well, I guess what I'm saying, without the variance, could you approve it?
no, you need to grant the variance to approve it, yes.
I think he was asking if there were no variance requested.
I think he
Would
was
you-
asking, could it be approved? Were you asking, could it be approved if you didn't grant the variances?
Yes.
And no, it could not be.
Is there some legal thing at play? How much of a variance can you give if he asks for 20 feet fine, 23 feet legally not? Is there legalities in the variance that you're allowed to give, or is that just strictly up to you
I
guys?
mean, it has to be, you can ask for any type of variance. And
So
you know.
there's nothing in play that directs you, this variance we can give up to this, but over this we're not legally allowed to?
You have to
Just strictly up you.
justify that you're meeting the intent of the ordinance still, even though you're asking for the variance. So.
But the amount of variance given is strictly up to you guys. There's no legal numbers set in there that you can have this much.
No,
variance.
there's no
Okay.
numeric,
Okay.
no. It's, we can't prohibit reasonable use of property. So to allow reasonable use of property, we can give variances. They don't usually go very high anyway. But no, there's no set number.
Mr. Harrington, I understand what you're wanting to do. Because you can doesn't necessarily mean you should. And I think that's the situation here in this neighborhood. We've got a neighborhood that looks one way, and you're going to completely change that. I just have a problem with that, to be honest with you. Not against you trying to develop something, not against you personally or anything, but it's just wrong for this neighborhood. You brought your pictures of the fourplex and the duplex, and they had big grassy front yards and driveways up there. The fourplex was parking around back in the side, and so they didn't look like what this one's going to look like. And I think the residents of Walnut Street, you all have been remiss over the years by not going to city council and demanding that you get some upgrades to your streets. You know, you need to start doing that. Get them to come in there and repave that, be at every one of those city council meetings. But that's not our problem. That's your problem. And that's not Mr. Harrington's problem. You know, just because he wants to build a new building and your streets are in bad shape, well, you know, shame on you for not getting your streets done better before now. Now, I understand the water runoff. I drove by there, and I think Walnut Street is higher than Chestnut Street. And if this, you know, some of this runoff could be running down to Chestnut Street. And again, if you had duplexes in there, whether it was or not, that, you know, you wouldn't have that. You wouldn't be coming to us for that problem there. So that's all I have to say.
Yeah, I still have an issue with, I'm not sure that we need to force our regulations on a street that doesn't have sidewalks and no curb and gutter. I mean, we're gonna change, regardless of what goes in here, we're gonna put something in there that doesn't match the rest of the street. I don't know if we need to make exceptions on these to waive our normal requirements or not. Because it's like you said, whether you put one house or 1, 2, or 5, what we require now is not going to match what you have on the rest of the street. I don't know what I'm trying to figure out a compromise, but between sewer lines and anybody ready to vote on it? You know what? Ready to vote? I'd entertain a motion then if somebody wants to come up with one.
Failed for lack of a motion.
Well, I'll move that we deny the request, the applicant.
I have a motion to deny.
If I might make a suggestion, you need to put some reasons with that because we've got a staff report that says they're in compliance.
It seems like what Charlie said a moment ago, that it doesn't fit. The applicant doesn't have the right to change the neighborhood to the extent that this would. It would not be good planning. We're supposed to be planning and zoning. It would not be good planning to allow this sort of thing to happen.
Have a second?
I'll second that.
I've got a motion by Mr. Wiseman and a second by Mr. Mifflin. Any other discussion on this? Does anybody else have comments? Ready to vote? This isn't a roll call vote, is it? Just
No, sir.
all those in favor say, all in favor to deny the application, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Well, the application is denied. We'll, that takes us to our next application.
Can we take a 5-minute break?
You want a 5-minute break? All right, we're going to take a quick break while everybody's exiting. If anybody wants to take 5 minutes, try to be back in here.
22.
Yeah.
Don't they have any stamp at all?
Be back here by 20 to 8.
Yeah.
What I asked Joe was what I was getting at as the basis. If you didn't prevent, if you didn't approve the variances.
And that's true. But the variances are part of our ordinance too. We are to give variances. To deny them is to deny reasonable variance, which is why I suggested earlier, we turn it down, yes, it's too intense a use for these facilities. Oh, sure, but we have to stay. We can't just say we don't like it, oh, that's too much. And there's changes that can
Wouldn't have.
We have no right looks like it, just like everything else on the street. Probably further than not break.
Because they can say, show us your
He was surprised that it went. But
of course, he's got the right to do that.
yeah, if I went against it, I wouldn't want
Too
anyone.
intense, before you send it back to them. And that's why I suggested.
Why in the world haven't they gone to city council before now? Complaining about this shit. That would be down there.
I drove around through the other night with Beauty and everything, and I couldn't believe automobiles parked on the street. I mean, they was bumper to bumper touching each other, parking places.
They're in their yards.
That's ridiculous. Some of them probably had 2 and 3 cars on boats themselves. That's something else too on the 5 legs. They'll be 3 cars out there. There'll be kids and grandkids and everything else all at the same time. Gosh, so we know, don't we? Yeah. You got to clear that pretty good.
That was most of them there. The whole street was against it. There might not be anybody here from the sun.
For which other one? When they come back?
There might not be anybody here for cell tower. Oh, yeah. Cell tower. You got the worst of Anybody's here for that?
Like somebody else says, it'd be nice to have it on your own property. Things pay pretty good. They talk about things out there in the west. I got a kid for $1,600 a month. The guy told me exactly. Yeah, he told me exactly.
Just for that 9 minutes, but also just as it is, if people don't get
Right.
which is just, I just upsets me.
The one in the room, but also just have them questions to you. That way they're not sort of getting into back and forth for each other when people start speaking.
Yep.
I'll tell you something else, man, I thought about. I don't know what should be legal, how you go about that. But I'm not real sure that people that are applying should sit there and watch us vote. I've thought about that a lot. People, they ought to be sitting there watching us vote. Your thing. You know, just there's cases where you don't want that person to know particular people. Vice versa.
That's all you mean.
In other words, when you really
should be a
good saying.
you know, it ought to be executive session. In other words, say, if you want to leave the room, so on the vote.
I know, sometimes all the young
You know, I've
generations
never
are all
really
about
had to experience
transparency.
that.
I guess we'll open the hearing.
All right. All right, so this is an application for a 255-foot wireless communications tower with a 15-foot lightning arrestor that would be on top for a total tower height of 270 feet. The property is on Bailey Road. They're proposing to do a 10,000 square foot lease within the property. The project site itself is a 22-acre site, and it's zoned A1 agricultural. All the surrounding properties are also zoned A1. One of the requirements for a cell tower is that the applicant made a reasonable effort to co-locate on another existing structure, existing tower, or whatnot within their search radius. The applicant did provide documentation that they did attempt to co-locate. There is one tower that was within their search radius, but they found that the tower was not structurally sound to be able to co-locate on it. So that's why they are not looking at that tower in particular and are looking and proposing to do this new tower. Also, one of the other requirements I should mention is that they are required to allow for 3 additional service providers to co-locate on their tower, and they will be providing the infrastructure to be able to do so. So this is the site. Again, I know it's hard to see, but this is a 22-acre site here. There is a small parcel here with an outbuilding on that property. The tower is essentially proposed back here, and then this is just a Google Map view along Bailey Road here. All right. So this is essentially showing the distances of where the 10,000 square foot lease area would be on the 22-acre project site. Distances to all their property lines. So the front property line here, this is a separate parcel, they would be 195 feet away. They'd be 341 feet away from the northern property line, 472 feet away from the southern property line, and then 384 feet from the rear property line. I need to get glasses, but the required setback for this tower would be 185 feet. We calculate that by saying you do half the tower height, so 270 divided by 2, plus the additional 50 feet, which is the required setback in the A1 zoning district. So the required setback would be 185 feet, so they are meeting that. And then this is just an enlarged site plan of the actual 10,000 square foot lease area. I kind of highlighted a few things here, but they are proposing the 8-foot chain link fence, which is required. They are meeting all of our landscape buffer area and landscaping requirements. The one variance that they are requesting as far as the landscaping is concerned is that the entrance isn't allowed to be more than 15 foot, and the distance between any trees that they provide. They are showing a 16-foot entrance here, so they are asking for a 1-foot variance to allow for that entrance that they're proposing. And the one other variance that they're requesting is for the tower height. We allow for, I believe, 200-foot self-support towers within the A1 zoning district, and they are proposing a 270-foot tower, so they are asking for a variance to exceed that maximum height by 70 feet. I'll let David talk more about that, but their justification is that we'll fill the service gap area that's needed out there, and so that's why they're looking to do the additional height, and also to reduce the number of towers that would be needed within that service gap radius. And so with that, staff is recommending approval of the development plan with the following variances and conditions. When I did the PowerPoint, I did not have that second variance for the 1-foot width to exceed it for the entrance, but I did add that in if the commission chooses to approve it, and David is asking for that variance as well. So are there any questions for me, or?
Any questions? Thank you.
All right.
Applicant?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to appear before you again, and of course I've already led off with my best joke before presenting. Could we perhaps bring up my PowerPoint, and could someone show me the idiot-proof version of push? Page down. Mr. Chairman, as this commission is well aware, I'm prepared to speak as long or as short a time as is necessary. Would it be possible for us to inquire whether there are any opponents here this evening before I begin?
Yes. Is there anybody here to speak against this application?
It's a rarity. I appear to be the most popular presenter here this evening. So, so I'll try to make kind of short shrift of this, but it is important that we establish a record. Of course, first of all, I'd be remiss if I don't thank your entire planning staff for their extensive work on our application. We're gratified at their recommendation of approval. I also have with me several expert witnesses. I'd like Marshall Slagle, if you would please raise your hand as a recognized planning expert, Bill Grigsby, structural engineering, and also Glenn Katz for real estate valuation. We're also gratified to have the county judge executive here who took time out of his busy day in order to come and observe our presentation. I would be loath to speak for him, but I believe he is here in a supportive capacity. Fair assessment, Judge?
Since you called on me, I will address the
Okay.
group. The only reason I'm here is because one of the things that I'm trying to do as county judge is improve access to broadband in a rural part of our community. And the possibility exists that this tower could help with that. And that I've been working with several internet service providers. I'm curious to know, though, this tower, if approved, would be required to allow 3 co-locating providers, correct?
Have a seat and I'll answer that.
All right.
Okay.
I appreciate it. But you called on me, so, it is something that's, I think, is important to our community. And it's almost like a utility was 50 years ago, water out in the county. It's not quite that important, but it's very important, and that's why I'm interested to hear what the commission has to say, and then about the tower itself.
Absolutely. Okay, so we'll try page down. Here we go. Of course, a copy of this presentation I'm now going to tender as an exhibit for inclusion in the official record, if I could please, as an exhibit, because we just, of course, filed this PowerPoint, with you within the last few minutes. And finally, of course, we've voluntarily waived any confidentiality associated with it. Kind of the key thing here is that we are requesting a height variance, and it's important we just explain why that's the case. Your staff has of course, reviewed our expert reports from our radio frequency engineers, but I want to make sure that I do a good job of reviewing that as part of the record for the entire commission this evening. Of course, what we're asking for is a 255-foot tower. The larger dimension that staff referenced earlier is based on the additional lightning arrestor, the lightning rod that's on top of the tower. And kind of the key reason why you have to do that becomes all too vividly clear when you look at this excerpt from the longer expert report that we have filed as part of our pre-filings in connection with this case. Ultimately, we simply cannot fill the coverage gap at that height. And of course, part of that's based on the hilly terrain in the area. It's a matter of physics, and we just can't do the job without the additional height. And this is the minimum height necessary in order to be able to fill that gap and to reach the number of homes that need the additional broadband service that the judge was good enough to refer to just a few minutes ago. Of course, your staff has dealt with site plan issues. The one thing that I would like to add for your consideration is that it's over 806 feet to the nearest residential structure. That's really hard to achieve in these areas. In this instance, we were able to come up with a configuration that would get us there, so that not only do we meet and exceed all of your setback criteria, but we've come up with something that's got a long setback distance from any other residential users in the area. Of course, we filed a full radio frequency need report in connection with this application, and I believe, of course, we tendered exhibit binders previously to staff. I assume those have been distributed, and that's at tab B. Kind of key elements of that, of course, this is where we are now, where that, of course, green is good, and as you can see, we've got pitifully little coverage currently. This is what we get afterwards. And of course, providing that sort of high quality in-building coverage that's reliable first time, every time is mission critical in this modern world. One of the, of course, other key questions that any planning commission should ask is whether or not we have exhausted co-location potential. One of the great misunderstandings many people have is that we like building towers. What I'm fond of indicating is that it is, of course, a joy to appear before you this evening. Always a pleasure, but we would not have to do any of this if we were doing a co-location. We would just pull a building permit and be done with this. In this instance, there is a tower within our search area, but it fails on two key criteria. First of all, the existing tower is far too short in terms of the available co-location rad center, so we can't fill the coverage gap. That's documented in the report from our expert radio frequency design engineer. And second, and more fundamentally, the existing tower cannot structurally accommodate our antennas. It would fail. And not only does the structure not accommodate them, but as our expert witness, Mr. Grigsby, has indicated, the foundation would fail as well. So that tower is a non-starter on all of those criteria. Also, kind of moving along quickly, of course, we have a search area that this commission is well familiar with. That we, of course, looked within this area in order to find a site that would meet all of your objective setback criteria, which we were able to do as endorsed by your staff report. Our county tower map is included, which is a requirement of the state statutes and your local regulations. We've also included a planning report, which was prepared by Marshall Slagle, who is one of the only fellows of the American Institute of Certified Planning in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. He's here today. If you have questions for him, as you would expect, he finds that this not only meets your regulations, but meets all the intents and purposes of your comprehensive plan as well. It is our view that legally, property valuation issues for a utility deployment of this type is not substantial evidence and could not be utilized as a basis for disapproving a cell tower application as a matter of both state and federal law. Having said that, it is an issue that often comes up in planning and zoning proceedings, so we brought a gentleman with us to opine on that issue. Glenn Katz is here. If you would, raise your hand again, Mr. Katz. He has over 25 years of real estate appraisal experience. He holds every professional designation for real estate appraisal, and he is the current president of the Kentucky chapter of the Appraisal Institute and was their education chairman for the past decade. He finds that this will have no adverse effect on real estate valuation. Structural considerations are dealt with by Mr. Grigsby in his expert report, and Bill, if you would, raise your hand. Okay. He finds that, of course, that this tower will be built to exceed both state and national standards, which exceed wind resistance standards for any other type of structure under the Kentucky Building Code. And, of course, also opines that the existing tower located within the search area cannot structurally accommodate our antennas or our deployment. We have a tower and foundation design that's included and a full geotechnical report. There's also floodplain information indicating that we're not part of a floodplain. Kind of a worthwhile concept, especially when considering our request for a height variance, is the material that we've included at tab J, which is the first time this has been filed, I believe, in the exhibits binder that has been distributed to you. It shows that there are a total of 17 FCC registered towers within 7 miles of this proposed site. 11 of those 17 are taller than this one, and that the average of all those towers is 274 feet. That's 4 feet taller than what we're requesting. Bottom line, what we are proposing is completely in line with the height of other towers that this Planning Commission has reviewed and approved in the past in this vicinity. We've, of course, met all your notice requirements. I believe this commission is well versed in federal telecom law. You obviously have an expert legal counsel whose opinion that you should follow in all circumstances. However, it is incumbent upon me to say a few things about how we view the law because, of course, these cases are different from any other types of cases that you will consider based on the unique state and federal enactments associated with it. You can ultimately, in the Sixth Circuit, which we are a part of under federal case precedent, no tower application can be turned down unless that turn down is based on specific findings of substantial evidence. The following items in the Sixth Circuit are not substantial evidence and cannot serve as a basis for a cell tower disapproval in our view of federal law. Lay opinion, unsupported opinion, expressions of concerns about aesthetics, claims that a tower is ugly or unwanted. None of those under federal case precedent can be utilized for a cell tower disapproval based on the case law that's referenced here. Of course, also, ultimately, our definition of what that service gap is controls under federal law, and any references to alleged health or environmental effects should not be entertained by the Commission as being violative of both federal law and state law, which parrots those provisions. And of course, we meet all of your local regulations. Finally, from a legal perspective, one of the reasons we're different is we are in fact a utility and are registered with the Kentucky Public Service Commission. I would note there are probably some teenagers who would indicate, given a choice between water and cell phone service, they might well opt as us being the more critical of the two. Now, I'm in the home stretch very quickly. It's worthwhile kind of noting that 70% of all emergency calls now are made from wireless phones. Now, hold that stat in mind. And then when you go to tab L of the exhibits binder that we've distributed, you'll see the latest version of the National Health Interview Study. This is the definitive study of how Americans communicate, and it's conducted each year by a consortium of federal health agencies, including the National Institutes for Health and the Centers for Disease Control. The purpose of this study is that since much of their public information comes from polling, it's critical that they know they are getting an unbiased sample. So they have to know how people communicate. Every year since I've started practicing in these fields, these percentages have gone up. And the latest version indicates that over 56% of all of us live in households with only wireless phones, no landline phone. Over 67% of all children are raised in households just like that. Now, when you take that statistic and you juxtapose it against the stat that I used just a few minutes ago, documenting the percentage of emergency calls that are made, you understand why that screen has to be blue. Has to be green, that I showed you earlier. It's absolutely critical that we provide that coverage because every single day in this country there are fewer landline phones. Not slower growth, fewer phones. That's just the way it is. Now, two things I would like to call to your attention, because one of them in particular goes directly to the issues that the county judge was addressing earlier. The first one is FirstNet. Of course, many of you are of course familiar with the 9/11 Commission, which was the presidential commission that was impaneled after the horrific terrorist attacks in this country. And many of you probably read that big report when it came out in a softback version shortly, about a year after the attacks. There were a number of recommendations in it, in which, of course, the commission was charged with examining why the attacks occurred, are there ways to prevent similar attacks from occurring, but also to better deal with attacks that might occur in the future, or major natural or man-made circumstances. Most of those recommendations were fully implemented. One of the key ones, however, was that the nation needed desperately to develop a unified wireless communication system for all key first responders and government officials who would have supervisory responsibility over them. And it has taken the FCC this long to finalize those plans. And last year, AT&T was selected as the provider of that service. And this site will be deployed with that new technology, in addition to the other new sites that we've come to you for permitting. Now, the next kind of key service, in addition to our normal wireless service that's worth noting, which goes directly to the broadband issue that was brought up a couple of minutes ago, is wireless local loop. This is a proprietary service that AT&T is offering on the new towers that we are deploying within this county and, of course, elsewhere in Kentucky. And in it, we have a completely separate set of antennas that are broadcasting on a separate frequency. And by having a small panel antenna, about so big, on your home or business, we provide high-speed internet service from this tower directly to that business or directly to that home, bypassing all other communication systems. So this solves the issue of the so-called last mile. How do you get high-speed internet when you don't have existing fiber optic systems built out? We're very excited about this. It is not as fast as fiber optics, but it's fast. And it also provides competition in those areas where there may already just be one substandard high-speed provider. Frankly, we are particularly excited about this and its prospects in eastern Kentucky. We think it's going to be a complete game changer for that area of the state. Copy of this presentation I have just included as an exhibit. At this juncture, what I'd also like to do is to include a copy of one of the hearing presentation binders that I've been referring to cumulatively as an exhibit, as well as all of the other documentation that we have previously filed in connection with this case, including the application and any supplemental exhibit filings. I've tried to be quick tonight. I obviously have to build a record, and I think I have done that. I'm grateful for this commission taking the time to let me run through my presentation. These are important issues because we're in the business of providing the communication systems now that this community desperately relies upon. This is a chronically underserved area, and we're excited about proceeding with construction since we have every other government approval that's required other than yours. If there are any questions, I'll be more than glad to answer them.
I had one question.
Sure.
When you add those two things on FirstNet, it was FirstNet, right?
Yeah,
And
FirstNet
then
and wireless local
wireless
loop.
local loop. Does that take any of the ability to put the other three co-location devices on?
Absolutely not.
It
And
does
a
not?
perfectly valid question. No, there's still tons of RAD centers and tons of structural capacity left in this tower. It's
That's what I was hoping you
over-engineered.
would say. I didn't want to hear that would take two of the
No,
future co-location.
not the case.
Other questions?
Just a in general question, because you've come before us several times, and all these towers have to be able to support other systems. How many of the towers of yours have more than one antenna on there?
Oh, the vast
Most of them?
majority. The vast majority do. You know, there's. Do we have anyone from the General Assembly here? Well, of course, my personal view, since there are none of them here, is that the Commonwealth is never safe when they are in session, and that you know ultimately they bear watching. But I think when we did our state law on this issue, they got it right on a lot of levels. There are some nuances that I would change, and I'm sure your legal counsel would change. But one of them is this mandate for co-location exhaustion. And the result of that is that, of course, all of the carriers within this state, and indeed in other areas as well, but in particular for us, have existing reciprocal master lease agreements, which set all the terms. So it's not a matter of just because, you know, as an example, AT&T, we compete with Verizon, but they have an absolute right to locate on one of these other structures on pre-existing terms. The vast majority of these things have multiple antennas on them, and it's based in part on our state getting that provision right.
Thank you.
One other question. On the wireless local loop, because this is primarily built as a cell tower for wireless communication, I guess, phone service,
Mm-hmm.
does that make the internet more affordable for the, I guess a lot of the cost of that tower was absorbed through the phone service. Is that?
I will tell you in the areas where we have built these without commenting on competitors or anything else, people are beating a path to us to subscribe. And of course, in addition to high-speed internet, we can also sell other stuff associated with that. If you want the latest movies or anything else, we can bundle that in, or we can separate it out. But we'll be marketing that very aggressively in this area.
What kind of timeline are we looking at to getting this built?
Well, of course, one of the stipulations that you folks provide is 2 years. This does not get scheduled until such time as we have the final approval. Having said that, it is my understanding that we plan to construct this within the next year or less.
Other questions?
The,
Go ahead.
on these maps we have in B, green is better, right?
Green's good.
Green's
It's
good.
an 8.5. It's a 7.5, and the blue is an 8.5. So why is a smaller number better?
Can I step up for just a second? Let me make sure I've given you the right thing.
So this is before.
Yes.
And this is after. So the
That's
green
correct.
is better.
Green is better.
But it's an 8. It's a 7.5 as opposed to an 8.5. Why is a smaller number better?
I'm not an engineer, but that's just the way it works. That smaller number is the better quality
Better number.
coverage.
Okay.
No, we're not building this to have worse coverage.
Yeah.
We're building it to have much better coverage.
Well, I live in a
Green-
blue area
green
now.
is
I
the
will be in a
ideal
green
on that.
area, so
Green
good
is
for
the
me.
ideal.
So I'm going to vote for it.
In that case, tell you what, Mr. Chairman, unless there are any other questions, I believe it's time for me to sit down with Grace and allow this to proceed.
Anybody from the audience that had questions or comments? Anybody want to speak for it? All right. Should be fairly easy then. Do I need to close the public hearing?
Oh, yes, sir.
All right. At this time, no other comments or questions, we'll close the public hearing. And I would entertain a motion from the commission to approve or deny.
Make a motion to approve PDP 2019-27 with the one variance for the height of the cell phone tower and the 7 conditions of approval. Approve this application based on.
Excuse me, they also added the extra, what is it, extra foot
Extra
on the
foot
gate.
on the gate.
So they added a second variance to
Oh,
get
it's
that
a
extra
second
foot on the
variance?
gate.
Very
Yeah.
small.
Sorry, that was a late add.
Okay, so there's 2 variances. Okay, so.
I second.
Have we left anything out? All right, we got a motion by Mr. Moran, and a second by Mr. Best. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those, is this the roll call vote?
No, close up sign.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. All right, it's unanimous.
Thank you very much,
Motion
ladies
passed.
and gentlemen.
Thank you.
Just because of your fine presentation, Dave.
All right, that brings us to, ZMA 2019-28, the Village of Georgetown. This is a zone change request for property currently zoned A1, R2, and I1 to B2 and R2. It's located at the south of East Main Street Extended and north of Lemons Mill Road and east of McClellan Circle. And this also is a public hearing. We'll open the public hearing.
All right, thank you. As you mentioned, this is a zoning map amendment hearing. The property in question is currently 3 separate parcels of land, and each of which has a different zoning currently. So, sort of going from north to south, the northernmost part of the property is currently zoned A1, which is our agricultural designation. The middle piece is currently zoned I1, which is light industrial. And then the southernmost piece is currently zoned R2, which is our medium-density residential. And what the applicant is looking to do is rezone these properties to a combination of R2, which is our medium-density residential, and B2, which is the highway commercial zoning district. The current acreage of the site as a whole is about 21.7 acres. So kind of going through those zonings that it currently holds. There's about 9 acres that are zoned residential, 10.5 acres that are zoned light industrial, and about 2.2 acres that are zoned agricultural. Currently, the property has access from East Main Street Extended and Lemons Mill Road. There is a proposed entrance shown on the concept plan from McClellan Circle as well. So this is an aerial photo of the area. You've got East Main Street Extended here along the north side of the property. McClellan Circle runs here along the west side of the property, and then Lemons Mill Road runs along the southern part of the property. And as I'm sure you are all familiar, there are existing neighborhoods then on the east side of the property. To the north here as well is where the new Creekside Elementary School is being built, and to the south is Dennis Anderson's development. Just in case I didn't make it clear, the area I highlighted in blue on there is the project site as a whole. Just kind of showing the existing zoning overlay. So this is the part up here that's currently zoned agricultural. This part here is zoned light industrial, and this part down here in the bottom is zoned residential. This light industrial portion of the property at one time was part of Johnson Controls, and when McClellan Circle was built, it was sort of separated from the remainder of that area. And so what the state did at that time was they actually split this agricultural lot, or agriculturally zoned lot that was here on the north side, so they could provide an access to that lot. And so there is actually some state right-of-way, which you can barely see here on this map. But that's sort of what split that agricultural lot into two pieces, one of which is now the church, and one is currently just, I think there's a residence on it. No? Oh, okay. A barn. I couldn't really tell. So this part is still zoned agricultural. This part was severed when the bypass was built. And then this part down here was rezoned as part of, I think it was part of the Mansion Estates. And it was sort of intended to be townhomes in the future, but there was never a preliminary plan approved for it as such, but it was rezoned as part of that development, that neighborhood. So this is sort of both a combination of the concept plan that the applicant submitted to us, as well as kind of showing the way that the zoning is proposed. So on this map, north would be to the right-hand side of the screen. But as you can see, all of this orange area, they're proposing to rezone to medium-density residential. This area here in the corner of the bypass and Lemons Mill Road, they're proposing to rezone to highway commercial. And just sort of at this time, I'm going to walk you through sort of my analysis in the staff report. At this time, the applicant is proposing for the residential part of this property to be sort of an independent living area for older individuals. If you all think back on the Ashton Grove project that was approved across the bypass from Kroger, they sort of had some independent living duplexes approved for that site, as well as a fully assisted living building. This will be sort of a similar situation. They're proposing to have independent living dwellings here on this site, and they have an agreement with Windsor Gardens, which already exists and would be more of the assisted living type facility. The commercial part of it is another component to this application, just to provide some additional benefit as far as a mixed use style development on the site, and some additional uses. So I did want to just kind of point out, I did note here in the staff report that the data from the Kentucky State Data Center shows that not only will the population of Georgetown and Scott County continue to increase, but it actually shows that the percentage of our population that is 70 years of age or older is also going to increase. The 2015 data from the American Community Survey showed that about 6.8% of the population at that time was 70 years of age or older, and that the data from the information from the State Data Center showed that percentage is set to roughly double to about 13.1% by 2040. So there is sort of a need for this style of development. We're seeing more applications in the recent years because developers are recognizing that need and that trend in our demographics. When we look at the comprehensive plan and state statute says that when we consider zoning map amendments, we first look at the comprehensive plan to see if the plan and the zonings that are proposed are in agreement with our comprehensive plan. If it's not, there's parts A and B here that we would then consider. Those things include whether or not the current zoning is inappropriate and what they're proposing is appropriate. And the other thing to consider, if part 1 does not apply, would be whether or not there have been changes in that area that were not anticipated by the comprehensive plan. So when I was looking both at their proposed plan as well as our comprehensive plan, I found that their plan does match our future land use map as far as potential land uses on the site. I found that the transition, having the commercial sort of more along the road frontage with the bypass in McClellan Circle, and then a transition from that to a medium density residential, does provide a nice transition from the busy intersection and the busy road of McClellan Circle and the single family roads and single family dwellings that are on the other side of this proposed development. I also found that the style of development, as far as the internal road network providing access to both the dwellings and the commercial facilities, was in agreement with our comprehensive plan. And then I go on to list here several other specific objectives in the staff report where the concept plan and the zonings that are proposed meet specific objectives in the comprehensive plan. So with those things in mind, I do find that the proposed zone change is in agreement with the comprehensive plan, and that we therefore do not need to consider parts A and B here. Just to reiterate, this is from our future land use map. Once again, I've outlined the project site in blue. This orange color that's on the future land use map represents urban residential uses, of which the proposed independent living facility would be one. And then this sort of reddish color that the future land use map has down in the corner represents commercial uses. Once again, very similar to what the applicant is proposing with their concept plan. As far as other items in the concept plan, most of the property is proposed to be used for residential uses, with both 2-unit attached and some detached dwellings. I already mentioned that the dwellings will be accessed from an internal road network. The applicant is proposing, at least at this time, for the commercial development to have 35-foot maximum building line in the commercial area. That would allow the commercial area to be more walkable, which given the nature of the residential development that adjoins it, is very important to allow the applicants or the people who would potentially live there in future to be able to access those commercial areas without necessarily needing to drive. As far as stormwater for the site, for this site generally flows to the north and west. It eventually crosses under the bypass and then under Lemons Mill or under East Main extended and flows to the North Elkhorn Creek. The applicant is proposing, if I can go back to the concept plan, as I mentioned, they are proposing a road entrance off of Lemons Mill. They are proposing a road entrance off of East Main Street extended. This small rectangle here where this road is shown, that's actually still state right-of-way at this time. And then they are proposing a new entrance off of the bypass that would likely be right-in, right-out only. That would obviously be pending state approval for any entrances off of the bypass. They're also showing a greenway buffer that would come across Lemons Mill and extend along the bypass and to the north. And they're proposing that would be the area where the Legacy Trail would go. Currently, the Legacy Trail is proposed to be constructed through Dennis Anderson's development to the south. The feasibility study indicated that the best route for it would be northward through this property, and the applicant is showing an area that could contain that. As far as traffic impacts, at the time, I think it's most appropriate that sort of in future, when either a preliminary subdivision plat or a preliminary development plan is eventually brought forward for this property, we would need a traffic impact study at that time, just to show us what type of road improvements may be needed to mitigate any traffic impacts that this site would cause. So that might be turn lanes on one or more roads, or it could be no changes. I'm not sure at this time, but it's more appropriate for that to come at the preliminary stage later, so that the applicant has a more firm idea of what this development will look like, and we can plan accordingly. Ultimately, I am recommending approval of this zone change to a combination of R2 and B2 with the 4 conditions that are listed in the staff report. The other condition of note is condition 3 there, that we would ask also at the time that they bring either a preliminary subdivision plat or a preliminary development plan, that a U.S. Army Corps of Engineers jurisdiction determination be completed, just so we can know what if any regulatory obligations there may be if it turns out there are streams and or wetlands present on the site. And that's all that I had.
Any questions for Matt from the commission? No, we'll hold up just a minute on the questions from the public. Does the applicant wish to speak?
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission.
Okay.
I'm here, Bruce Langford, here with Matt Welch, Greg Johnson, and David Lusby, the owners of the companies that are going to combine their properties. That's Welch Real Estate Holdings, American Mini Storage, and Lusby Properties. And they're going to take on this project, independent living facility, in association with Mr. Gary Keckley, who could not be here tonight, but he has involved his company in similar projects. It's what he does. So they're going to undertake to do this with him. I think Matthew is going to attempt to answer your questions or explain any comments he might have about the development plan. David may chime in along with Greg Johnson. All of them will answer any questions that you might have. But I want to thank Matthew for the report. That's a good, detailed report. We don't have to say much. He said it all. We don't have to do much. He did it all. So I think it's a good opportunity to get something like this in the community, and we want to have your approval. Matthew?
Thank you. Yeah, come on up.
Thank you, members of the commission. My name is Matt Welch. I'm one of the developers of the property. And as Mr. Langford already noted, Mr. Summers did a good job summarizing the project. And if we can answer any questions, we'll be happy to do so.
I think my only questions would be what you, if you had maybe some representative architectural, I mean, this is just I know this is early in the stages right now, but just some questions is that.
I'm not sure what you're asking. I'm sorry.
What it's going to look like.
What it's going to look like, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you can answer.
I'm Greg Johnson.
Yep.
Right now, we're just submitting a concept plan.
Right.
We'll be back here once the zone change done with a preliminary development plan, and we'll have front images of all of the houses, and you'll be able to know what it's going to look like.
At this point, you do feel strongly that it will be, you're going to stick with this plan as far as the.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Mr. Keckley is he's one of the owners of Windsor Gardens. So he's already active in this community. He's got, I think, 26 of these types of facilities. So he already knows exactly what he wants to build and what they're going to look like. We'll bring pictures, not just renderings. So should be at that point.
Yeah, I think I'm getting ahead of myself on asking what it looks like. Any other questions? The applicant? All right. Questions from the audience?
I'm going to go first. And if you don't mind, I'm going to use your slides. Yeah, I need a lesson.
Page down.
Page up, and then the laser. Okay. Well, good afternoon, Council. My name is Anne Marie Danaker. I live, I'll show you where I live. I live on Santa Barbara Boulevard, and I recognize some of my neighbors. Bailey's dad. He's the first person I met when I moved into the neighborhood. I'm relatively new to Georgetown. I've only lived here less than 2 years. I retired from the Army in October 2017 and moved here in November. Bought my very, very first house. I like Georgetown. I lived in Lexington 30 years ago before I joined the Army, so I had some friends here. So I wanted to come back here, and so I bought a house. My house is right there. So you can see I'm very close. The first thing that I see is that right now, less than probably 40 feet from my kitchen sink, I now have a house behind me instead of 3-story high honeysuckles and old growth trees and that lovely old barn that I can sit and drink my coffee with. So, but you know, that's not legal stuff. So Mr. Perkins, I am very sorry.
I'm so sorry.
However, this is a drainage, I don't know what you call it, pond. It's a big dent in the area where all the water from the neighborhood goes into. I love to sit there when it's raining and watch it fill up with water because it's fun. The birds go in there, they play around. I wish the ducks would come in there. This is all a relatively new area in here, and I'm sorry, but our drainage area sucks. I don't personally have a problem, but I listen to our HOA, people in our HOA, and I see the pictures on Facebook, and I can walk around and drive around the neighborhood, and I see when it rains, people's yard fills up with water. The person who is across the street from me right there, brand new house, it was built after mine. Mine was built in July of 2017. His house was built after mine. His lawn becomes a lake. Now this again is a brand new, relatively new subdivision. Most of the houses have been built in the last 3 years. So if we're already having problems now in a new subdivision, I can't even imagine what we're going to have once the school is finished, which is over here, and all this is in here. Now behind my house, down probably along there, and you don't even see it because again, I have all these honeysuckle bushes. You don't see it until it rains, but there's a whole big drainage thing down there that becomes a little mighty Mississippi when we have heavy rains. So my first question is, what's going to become of that drainage? Where is that water going to go? Because because it actually winds up in that drainage pond there, but it has to get there. So where will that water go to when all that comes in? Now, as far as traffic goes, there's a lot of traffic on this part of area. There's a stoplight there. There's a stoplight there. As he said, let me go to. As he said, there is a school that's being built right there. And unfortunately, for the last year, I've listened to jackhammers at 6 o'clock on Saturday morning, explosions every afternoon that rattle my dishes. And there is also a quarry here that I count on the average of an hour is about 15 dump trucks and or cement mixers that go screaming down this road. They don't stop. They don't care about traffic. They really could care less about anything that's going on there. And I've been told, and I could be wrong, perhaps one of you can tell me that that's not going to change as far as an access road to the quarry. So now you've got a school going in here. It is an elementary school, so you don't have a lot of kids driving, but there is going to be added traffic. All I know is that they're changing the road here is this is a 2-lane road that they're adding, starting about right here is a right turn lane. So that's it. You have a right turn lane and a straight through lane, quite possibly a left turn lane, I'm not sure. So now here's the entrance to the whatever it is that you want to put over here, the limited facility, limited assisted, independent living. Yes. So Lemons Mill has been built up. There's all kinds of apartment buildings that have been added there. There's a Shell station right there. So now you want to add another entrance up here. It's already quite difficult to come out of, this is Mansion Estates here and East Main Estates down here. So it's already difficult to come out and make the left turn onto Lemons Mill and sometimes even the right turn. You've got people coming out of the Shell station. This is all, of course, industrial. Now, a lot of times, I was first surprised when I first moved here. I'd wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, and there'd be all this traffic on McClellan. Didn't understand at the time that Toyota runs the 2 different shifts that get off at 2 and start at 6. So sometimes at 4 o'clock in the morning, there is traffic backed up from this light all the way back here. So there is an incredible amount of noise there, and there's an incredible amount of traffic. So I do remember in your presentation that there is a traffic impact plan that has to be studied. Because I don't see how you can plan for traffic for a school that isn't built yet, because that's going to be an immense amount of traffic, school buses, et cetera, et cetera. Again, my concern is about this quarry. Now, I don't have kids that go to that school, but if I did, I'd be very concerned about them getting smushed. Again, you guys might think I'm being over dramatic, but I can see that road from my dining room table, and I see these trucks, huge trucks, dump trucks, cement mixers, going up and down that road, flying, not doing 25 miles an hour, but going as fast as they can, because they don't care or they've not been told. I don't know what the reasoning is. So those are my 2 biggest concerns, and I'm going to go back to the drainage here, because again, drainage pond fed by, I'm assuming all these houses right here, that there's a little drainage ditch thing. If you were to go over there now, you'd see nothing. But after 2 hours of rain, it becomes a little raging river, and this fills up. Now, I have also seen, after torrential rains, this intersection basically underwater because I don't know. I have no idea how it works, but water comes from somewhere, and it's just a torrent that goes right across there, and it's a huge amount of water. Again, the school here. So I believe, and I know I'm probably speaking for my neighbors, between the school traffic, the quarry traffic, now this traffic, and this and all this. That's a lot for a little piece of land that really is not that big. So I think I said my piece. Thank you for listening.
Others from the audience? One or the other.
I'm Ann Bevins. I've been writing history for about 62 years. And I want to speak on the general aspect of the total farm that relates to the development that's happening now and looking at the future about what's going to happen. I want to pass out handouts explaining the historical content of the property. So if you all want to pass these, there are 10 pieces from an upcoming history book. As Scott County has been developing since 1985, we've lost a number of really historic buildings where people have lived who have contributed to the Scott County that we now have. One of the first, there are 2 properties right now that are really crucial in our thinking in Scott County development. One is the Israel Grant log house that is fairly close to East Main Extended. The spring house, the stone spring house that is closer to McClellan Circle from the house. The little spring branch that draws from the spring and flows, and you can follow the little spring branch that flows into Elkhorn. Israel Grant was a nephew of Daniel Boone. His family moved here as people were just beginning to move out of the forest. Boone Station was established in 1775. About 1785, people began building on the land grants that they had acquired. And the Grants built a log house that served as a place for them to live until they built the larger log house, which is the house that John L. Drake bought, I think, around 1936 as part of that larger farm, which is located on both sides of the bypass. So most of us had assumed that the first log house was a log stable that's on a little road that goes down by the house. We've lately investigated that more closely, and there actually are roof joists, the seats for the roof joists that rise to a mortise joint that's pegged, and that log building was actually a log house, and it's crucial because of its role not only where the Grants lived when they were building the larger log house, but it's crucial because it later served as a stable. And in 1819, when the Grant children, their father was killed in Indian conflict. And when the children came to majority, they sold that property. And the property that includes the building that we called the stable and the log house that's described in detail in your handout. And I'll be glad to provide. I'll run off copies for you all. I apologize because my printer decided to, but when you lift 10 pages from 600 pages, sometimes pictures and illustrations move around when you're trying to print them. So that happened on the first page of what I've given to you all. But in
Ms. Bevins, I had one question before we get too much further. You do realize that that's the property diagonally across the road, isn't it? It's not.
Right, but it's part of the larger farm, so I thought maybe you all should start
Okay.
thinking about it right now.
All right.
Do take note of this property and other properties. Those of us who are involved in historic preservation have maintained that when a developer acquires a property that has a historic property on it, that historic property could be preserved and could become a centerpiece for that development, in which the history of the entire development could be explained to people who are buying, and children growing up in those developments then would know what had happened in that area before they moved into that area. So I'm passing this out. I realize that it's in advance of what you all will be considering, but something for you to keep in mind as the development moves across the road toward Georgetown. So I thank you for listening, and I'm hoping within the next year to publish my 4-volume rural study. And the first chapter in volumes 3 and 4 will be called Requiem, and will deal with the properties that have been lost due to development that has occurred since 1985. So thank you all for listening to me. and keep these things in mind as the future moves along.
Ms. Bevins, is this property we're considering now, is that barn that was referred to, is that one of these?
No,
You're across the road.
this is on,
Across McClellan Circle
yes,
from them,
yes.
yeah.
Yes.
Drake,
Drake
yeah.
property.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So I thought I would put in my 2 cents worth at this point as we're moving in the direction of developing the rest of
I think Dan's showing you where it is.
urban Georgetown.
Yeah. Now, did we rezone that another day?
It
It's across
is,
the road.
it's posted for commercial
Yeah.
zoning.
But did we decide though that that log house would be preserved as part of that development plan that the other people came with, or someone came with?
They wanted to move it. They wanted to move the house, possibly.
Move the house.
And
There have been several proposals for that property.
Yeah, if I may, when the Drake property came before you all, they weren't, if I remember correctly, they weren't sure what they were going to do with the house, if it was going to be, they were going to attempt to move it either elsewhere on the site, or if they were going to try to develop around it. They weren't sure, but they are obviously aware of the historic nature of the house and Spring House and their historic value.
And they intend to preserve that in some way.
I don't know the details of that.
There are several proposals out there.
I can tell you I received an email today from the Drake family. They have a contract to sell that house, to take it down and relocate it so that it can be preserved. Has nothing to do with this application, but I thought I'd tell you that.
Steve. Any other questions? Oh, here we go. We got one more. One more person from the audience.
Hi, I'm Linda Cook. I live at 123 Santa Barbara Boulevard, and I moved there into the Mansion Estates in 2003, and I have the distinct honor, which I'd give away in a heartbeat if somebody would take it, the position of being the secretary of the Mansion Estates HOA. So anyway, I'm here basically to learn about what's going to be on the other side of my backyard fence. And I must say, I'm pleased to hear that, and if I'm understanding correctly, it's going to be basically independent living for the elderly, and I'm getting close myself, and perhaps assisted living.
Affiliated with assisted living, but it'll be independent living. It will not be assisted living.
Okay, so we're not talking apartments or
No,
maybe.
duplexes and single family IPs.
Great.
With services provided through the assisted living facility.
Okay, because
Meals, medications, lawn care.
my mother was in Windsor Gardens for a while and nicely run. I'm glad to hear this. I can just climb my fence and move on to the next chapter of my life. Anyway, and as far as Mr. Welch goes, I've heard nothing but wonderful things about you. Seriously. And I had never met you until tonight. So I'm glad to know who you are. And I may be naive in saying this, but I've always heard, again, excellent things about him. So I'd like to think he would take care of any drainage issues that the area might have. I have a nice big culvert on the other side of my privacy fence, and it collects a lot of runoff from the lake at the head of Santa Barbara. So I was kind of wondering about the lake. Will it still exist or be filled in, or?
It will still exist.
Okay, so our blue heron can stay there. Yes, okay. Wondered about that. And then another gentleman brought up this legacy trail, and I'm wondering what that is. Is that like a path, a walking path? That sounds good to me too. And maybe one thing directed to Mr. Welch. I was there, as I said, in 2003, and I saw what used to be flat farmland turned into dump truck after dump truck of huge boulders. Do you know what's underneath that land you're wanting to develop? Because, I mean, it is rock after rock. I mean, you know that, so I guess you know how to develop that.
We're very well aware of that. That was all put in from Phil from other developments around town. It was under the purview of Greg Johnson, and
So,
Just so you know what you're getting into.
We're well aware of that.
Over the 16 years that I've lived there, I mean, it's filled in, and there's some nice trees now and a grassy area, but
I think you'd be very pleased with the landscaping that we're
excellent, because it does back up right to my finish. But again, I've heard nothing but good things about you, and I'm sure he'd take care of any drainage issues. I'd like to think that. And just maybe one last question addressed to Mr. Welch or anybody who knows the commercial aspect of this. If you have any idea what type of commercial development might go in, are we looking at another gas station? I mean, would you even know at this point?
At this point, we don't know, but I can tell you that our intent is to fill the commercial op parcels with potential tenants that are complementary to our development.
Great. Could there possibly be a restaurant maybe, or you don't
We would
know?
definitely entertain that.
Okay, I'd vote for that. I think those are my concerns, and I can report now back to my HOA and let them know what we can kind of expect. Do you have any kind of timeline in mind for this? I'm surprised the development hasn't started long before now.
Yeah. Well, this is the beginning process, and we're going to keep moving forward. So it's
I don't know how quickly
quite
things
a lengthy
move, but
process, but best case scenario, hopefully maybe we can start moving some dirt in the fall.
okay. And you'll quietly move that dirt and put up,
No, that won't
put up
happen. I'm
dust
sorry, but
barriers
like I said, for the
and
last year, I have listened to them build that school. Explosions, jackhammers, heavy equipment, earth moving equipment. No, it won't be quiet.
I know. But it's called progress, I guess, and
They'll only work after dark.
Right. Anyway, thank you, and thanks for answering my questions. And I feel much better now that I've heard what's going to be on the other side of my nice backyard. And
Good.
Ben, you have any comments on the stormwater? I know I think it's the same comments as we had before that.
I think they know, I commented TRC, that's the entire drainage way for the whole area, so they've
Yep.
got their work cut out for them to figure all that out.
Yeah, and there are, if you look at these plans, I mean, these are early, but there will be several detention basins to try to slow down the flow of water and release it in a controlled way instead of an uncontrolled way. I mean, in many cases, once you do a development like this, in best case scenario, the water flooding and is better after the development than it was before. So, and hopefully that will be the case here. We have any? Does the applicant have any? Want to make any responses to any of the questions? Or I think we probably covered everything. Maybe not at the podium, or not at the microphone. But we need to cover anything else? Any questions from commissioners? Ready for a vote?
And this would be a roll call.
This is a roll call vote because this is the zone change. I'd entertain a motion.
I'll move that we accept ZMA-2019-28 zone change from A1, R2, and Industrial 1 to B2 and R2.
Could you include in that adopting the staff report in support of that?
And adapting the staff report that was
Let's
stated.
adopt it and don't adapt it, 'cause we might change it around.
Adopt it.
With the 4 conditions of approval.
Yes.
Yep.
I
All right, we have a.
question before you, I'm sorry. So
Go ahead.
Part of it, again, they had to do a traffic impact study. He says he wants to start moving land in the fall. That school isn't open yet. How can you possibly do a traffic study with a school that won't be open before they want to start moving dirt?
They'll still do it, probably.
How are we going to know how the traffic's going to be taken care of and the water and the drainage. Again, this is a relatively new subdivision that already has drainage problems.
This right now is just the zone change.
Okay?
And the thing that will come next will be a
Development plan.
Development plan, and the development plan will have to include a lot more detail.
But as far as the school system goes, they're gonna know very well what the student population is, what the car is anticipated. They'll be able to give very good numbers for those kind of counts to be made. As far as the water goes, I think they've got probably very good information on that already. That's gonna be more a matter of how they're gonna deal with it than getting good measurements of what the need's gonna be. Those things are fairly standard things. Now, why yours has problems, someone maybe missed a standard thing or two. But those things, they can study those incredibly well. And that's all part of the
And
development
taking
plan.
into
and
account
subdivision
all the
plan.
vehicles, all the trucks that come from here.
Yes.
That's-
Goodness knows, we've been counting those trucks since I was a child,
That's,
so.
And that has no impact on anything.
We didn't have any say in that, though. When the school put that when they located that elementary, they didn't consult with us. When they decide, that's where it goes.
I guess when a kid gets run over, there'll be some issues, but, okay.
All right, we've got a motion. We've got a motion to accept it. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second, Mr. Caldwell. The motion made by Mr. Mifflin. This is a roll call vote, so we will call by roll. Mr. Wiseman?
Yes.
Mr. Selsky's not here. Mr. Moran?
Yes.
Mr. Mifflin?
Yes.
Mr. Vest?
Yes.
Mr. Stone?
Yes.
Mr. Caldwell?
Yes.
Chairman votes yes. Ms. Mizell's not here. Passes unanimously, and we thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Who's going to sign the paper? There we go. Bruce.
Man in charge, Will.
Are we done? No, we got updates if Joe has any. I don't know. Give him a second. You have any updates previously?
I think so. And I think the other one was,
Should I clear the room?
Clear the room?
yeah, that was consent.
You have something else to go over?
No, I didn't. I just didn't know if you wanted the noise down before you.
I didn't know if you had anything else you wanted
I
to
don't
cover.
have anything else.
I move for an adjournment.
Motion to adjourn? So, accepted.